The story begins with our protagonist being welcomed by a goddess in a mysterious place. She introduces herself as Lady Nolan and reveals that he has been summoned to Midgard through the Otherworld summoning spell. However, she quickly apologizes, explaining that he was unintentionally caught in a ritual meant for someone else. Confused, the protagonist questions her statement as she just welcomed him as though he belonged here. Nolan clarifies that the Otherworlder summoning system operates by randomly selecting individuals from an infinite number of worlds. He was supposed to be excluded from this selection process, yet somehow the system still pulled him in. Startled, the protagonist listens as Nolan elaborates on the risks of the summoning spell. The laws of Midgard and Earth are vastly different, making the spell inherently dangerous. In fact, it carries the potential to destabilize Midgard itself, which is why it was deemed forbidden. Despite this, a reckless and corrupt nation went ahead and performed the ritual. Although Nolan detected the spell's activation and tried to intervene, she was unable to stop it entirely. As a result, she brought him here for his safety. Curious, the protagonist asks if the others summoned by the spell have also been brought to this place. Nolan shakes her head, explaining that those individuals, as the proper targets of the spell, were transported to the Holy Sidonia Empire, the location where the ritual had been initiated. He soon realizes that this entire situation was merely a mistake and requests that she send him back to his original world. However, she informs him that this is not possible. She explains that she was extremely angry with those responsible, so she took matters into her own hands, ensuring that they could never use that spell again. She attempts to clarify her actions, but her explanation becomes too technical for him to grasp, prompting him to ask for a simpler version. She finally explains that she has made it so that he can never return to his world, and moreover, he no longer has a physical body to return to. It is then revealed that the protagonist exists only as a soul, in the form of a small furball. He is shocked to realize that he lacks a body. Nolan apologizes for the predicament, explaining that he was inadvertently caught in the backlash of the summoning, as he was not the intended target. He responds that an apology does little to alleviate his current situation and demands to know what will happen to him now. She suggests that he accept the circumstances and begin a new life in Midgard. He wonders if this means he will be sent to the Sidonia Empire, to which she acknowledges she could arrange that. However, she cautions him that the Sidonia Empire is a difficult place to be, and since he was summoned by mistake, he would likely face mistreatment. Hearing this, he is disheartened, but she reassures him, telling him to remain calm. She assures him that she is committed to fixing his situation, as she feels responsible for what has occurred. She informs him that she plans to send him to a different nation with her assistance, and as an apology he will also receive her blessing. He is somewhat perplexed by this, but she reassures him, explaining that it's a common trope in Japanese video games and anime. She intends to send him to a fantasy world similar to those depicted in such media, and she believes it will be an exciting experience for him. Despite her optimism, he feels nothing but anxiety. Ignoring his apprehension, she asks him to try opening his status window, which appears as soon as he thinks about it. Upon viewing it, he discovers that he is now 17 years old, although he had been a 40-year-old salaryman in his previous life and currently has no occupation. Nolan goes on to explain that there are no salarymen in this world. Instead, there are various other professions. First, there are combat-oriented jobs such as swordsman, mage, knight, thief, and hunter. Then there are production-related jobs like herbalist, alchemist, blacksmith, and carpenter. Since he has no interest in combat, he expresses a desire to pursue a production job. The goddess grants him a skill suitable for such a career, along with a few additional useful abilities to help him start his new life. She explains that by using the skills he gains through his actions, he will be able to secure a job, and then sends him to the continent of Asgard. He is suddenly transported to a location by a pond and observes his new appearance, feeling quite pleased with how he looks. Upon inspecting the items given to him by the goddess, he discovers food, money, and a knife. Concerned that his blessing from the goddess might cause trouble if discovered, he checks his status window and finds that he can conceal his skills. He also discovers he has an item box skill and hides both that and his blessing. Additionally, he notices several types of magic skills, and true to his otaku nature, he decides to experiment with them. He avoids using fire magic to prevent setting the surroundings alight and instead tests his earth, wind, and water magic. Observing their effectiveness, he concludes that he really is in a fantasy world. He then sets out in search of a village. Along the way, he spots some wood and, upon appraising it, learns that it is Triant wood, a high-quality material obtained from a monster called Triant. This wood can be used to craft staves, magical items, and spear shafts. Pleased with his find, he uses his blacksmithing skill to shape the wood into a spear. He deduces that the high-quality wood in the area suggests the plants here might be unique as well. To his surprise, he discovers that the entire area is abundant with valuable herbs. He collects a substantial amount, but realizing they won't fit in his bag, he stores them in his item box, which offers limitless storage. At that moment, a girl rushes toward him and hides behind him. He notices a massive aggressive rabbit chasing her. Preparing to defend himself, he raises his spear, only for the girl to inform him that the rabbit is carnivorous, making him even more nervous. The rabbit lunges at him, but he manages to defeat it with his spear. He is astonished by his success, and finds that he has gained a warrior job which he hadn't desired. The girl expresses her gratitude for saving her, and he asks her where she is from. She explains that she is from Board Village and had wandered into the forest while gathering medicinal herbs. He inquires if he can accompany her back to her village, and she agrees without hesitation. Pleased, he learns that she has no issue with his company. She then asks if he won't be taking the horned rabbit with him, mentioning that it's quite delicious. He stores the rabbit in his item box, explaining that while living creatures can't be stored, corpses are no problem. The girl is amazed by his item box skill and compliments him. She introduces herself as Molly, and he responds with his name Takumi. The scene shifts to the Holy Sidonia Empire, where the three humans who have been summoned find themselves confused, uncertain of their whereabouts. A cloaked woman greets them, revealing that they are in a different world. She explains that they have been summoned to act as heroes and save this world, but they fail to comprehend what she is saying. She introduces herself as Elizabeth, the first empress of the Holy Sidonia Empire, and reveals her face. Her expression gives off a vibe of someone who might swindle you out of your money. Among the group, a girl named Akane suddenly receives a unique skill called Revelation from Lady Nolan. A divine revelation fills her mind, instructing her to trust her instincts as they will lead her to the right answers. Akane decides not to trust Elizabeth, sensing that everything about her is too dangerous. The scene then transitions to Molly's parents, who express their gratitude to Takumi for saving their daughter. Molly's father introduces himself as Banga the Hunter and her mother as Martha. Takumi asks if he can remain in their village for a while, and they agree, telling him that their village is rich in herbs and that a vein of ore is nearby. Excited by the news, Takumi is introduced to Bolton, the village blacksmith, by Banga. Takumi expresses his gratitude for being allowed to stay, but they inform him that there is no inn in the village. Instead, they offer to build a home for him, which he happily accepts. They lead him to a plot of land for his new house, and Bolton requests help from the villagers to construct it. Takumi decides to contribute by using his earth magic to level the ground, impressing everyone with his magical abilities. Though using magic depletes much of his mana, Banga suggests that Takumi conserve his energy and allow them to handle the rest. Later, Takumi's new home is completed, and he uses his carpentry and blacksmithing skills to create some basic furniture. He then checks his status window, wondering if he can change his warrior job. Just as he thinks about it, an option to change jobs appears before him. He selects alchemist and blacksmith as his primary jobs and begins to focus on the ores of iron, silver, and copper that he mined alongside Bobbin. He also mentions having magic iron ore, a special type of iron infused with mana, and declares that he plans to turn all of them into ingots today. He begins with the iron ore, explaining that typically a furnace would be required to process ores into ingots. However, due to the magic of this world, no furnace is necessary. Using his alchemy and earth magic, he transforms the iron ore into an ingot, a process that drains a significant amount of his mana. Despite this, he decides to continue, eager to create numerous items from iron and copper. Later, Molly arrives with his dinner but notices that he has collapsed. Afterward, he regains consciousness and explains that he overexerted himself with magic and fainted. Martha scolds him for his actions, while Banga offers him a healing potion which restores him. He resumes his alchemy work. From that point on, Martha and Molly check on him periodically. Over the next few days, he continues using his alchemy to refine ores into ingots. In addition to iron and copper, he acquires small amounts of gold, lead, tungsten, titanium, and tin. With these, he crafts utensils and tools, causing his alchemist and blacksmith levels to rise dramatically. Takumi spends time learning smithing from Bolton, assisting him with fire magic. Together they forge a knife, and Bolton proudly declares it his finest creation. Takumi's blacksmithing level reaches 40, while his alchemy level stands at 33, a result that disappoints him as his primary focus is alchemy. Later, Takumi asks Banga for some basic potions, hoping to try making his own using the herbs he has gathered. Banga agrees but mentions that he only has basic potions available, to which Takumi has no objections. Takumi then begins brewing potions with an air of an evil witch, which triggers memories of his childhood experiments. Upon completing his potion, he notices its color differs from the one given to him by Banga. He also senses mana flowing from it. He speculates that the difference might be due to his use of water magic to prepare the water, and expresses a desire to learn more potion recipes. Later, Takumi eats a random poisonous plant and after being poisoned, uses his healing spell to recover. This experience grants him resistance to poison and paralysis. He notes that this method is the fastest way to build resistance and improve his light magic skill. Although it's far from easy, he reveals that as a result he can now use purification magic. At that moment, a massive armored boar of level 25 appears before him. Takumi grabs his spear and knife, preparing for battle. The boar charges at him, and he throws his knife, but it has no effect. He then attacks with his spear, only for it to shatter into pieces. He tries using his rock ball and wind cutter spells, but they prove ineffective. He wonders what his next move should be. Just then, Takumi notices movement behind him and discovers a poison spider lurking there. Initially thinking he is doomed, he soon realizes the spider is injured. As the boar charges at him while he's distracted, he braces for impact, but the spider intervenes, blinding the boar and causing it to miss. Takumi, still unsure how to defeat the beast, wonders how he can survive. Then an idea strikes him. He decides to use his decomposition skill from alchemy to kill the boar. This grants him martial arts and magic combat skills, and he is astonished that his crafting magic was the key to his survival. He then checks on the poison spider, noticing that it's on the verge of death. Takumi thanks the spider, realizing it tried to save him earlier. He heals the spider and attempts to leave, but a notification informs him that he has successfully contained the spider. Surprised that he can keep the spider as a pet, Takumi notices the creature looking at him with gleaming eyes, making it hard for him to walk away. He asks the spider if it wants to come with him and, in the process, tames it. This allows him to communicate with the spider telepathically. He asks if it has a name, to which the spider replies no. Takumi names it Maple, due to the maple leaf pattern on its back. As soon as the spider accepts the name, it evolves into a killer spider, and its severed leg regenerates. Later, Takumi in the presents the massive armored boar he killed to the villagers. They are astonished that he managed to slay such a formidable beast on his own. Molly notices the large spider on his back, causing the villagers to worry. Takumi reassures them, explaining that it's just a monster he tamed. Banga is shocked, remarking that taming insect-type monsters is nearly impossible. Takumi shifts the conversation, suggesting they focus on finishing the boar for now. The villagers are surprised that he wants to share it with them, but he assures them it's no problem. They gather together for a feast, and during the meal, Banga hands Takumi the boar's fangs and leftover hide, telling him he can sell them in a larger city. Takumi inquires about the nearest big city, and Banga mentions that it's Bolton. Meanwhile, Maple plays with the children, and Baban observes that the village has grown livelier since Takumi's arrival. Bunga agrees, but notes that Takumi doesn't seem like the type to settle in a small village for long. Elsewhere, Nolan checks on Takumi, pleased to see that he is doing well. Another goddess asks Nolan what she hopes to gain from Takumi. Nolan responds with confusion, but she reveals that she granted Takumi a special body, her blessing, and even sent him a year into the past before the Holy Sidonia Empire's summoning spell was activated. Nolan claims there's no particular significance behind her actions, though her expression suggests otherwise. Upon awakening one morning, Takumi finds himself ensnared in a cocoon of spider silk, leaving only his head exposed. It is immediately apparent that his pet spider, Maple, is the culprit, yet he extends her the benefit of the doubt, asking her to confess to her actions. Maple, however, refuses to acknowledge any wrongdoing, causing Takumi to question the wisdom of having allowed such a venomous creature to become his companion. Feeling a sense of betrayal from being played with during his sleep, Takumi demands an apology from Maple. Reluctantly, she offers a tearful apology, explaining that she had felt lonely when he had neglected her the previous evening while engrossed in his work on potions and ores. She claims that her actions were a subconscious response to this isolation. Takumi, empathizing with Maple's feelings, decides to forgive her. He too apologizes for not having spent more time with her and promises to make amends. To show his sincerity, he pledges to take a break from his work that day, dedicating it entirely to playing with her. These heartfelt words are more than enough to bring joy to Maple, who eagerly leaps onto him, her enthusiasm boundless as she begins to frolic exuberantly in her master's presence. At that moment, Martha enters Takumi's room bearing lunch, only to be left utterly mortified upon discovering him ensnared in a mummified state. Naturally, she assumes that the lethal spider is preparing to devour the poor boy who she believes is entirely unaware of the danger. However, Takumi reassures her that it is nothing more than a misunderstanding and that Maple isn't truly harmless. Martha's gaze shifts to the lustrous sheen of Maple's silk, and in that instant, a devious idea forms in her mind. Acting swiftly on this newfound inspiration, she fashions a stunning dress top from the spider silk and then ventures into the village to showcase her creation to the other women. Each one admires the exquisite texture, remarking on its perfection and expressing a desire to possess one of their own. As the fabric is regarded as a luxury item in this world, Takumi overhears their conversation and becomes intrigued upon hearing the term luxury. Seizing the opportunity, he contemplates the potential for profit. Yet as he listens further, he learns from the women that spider silk is a rare and costly commodity, highly sought after by the nobility. While Takumi busies himself with formulating a potential business plan, Martha requests that Maple produce additional silk, this time with added elasticity, as such a modification would elevate the material to a more premium status. Takumi, feeling a pang of jealousy as he watches Maple readily comply with Martha's request, reminds his pet that they were supposed to spend the day together. Maple, however, explains that she is presently occupied, and seeing this, Takumi refrains from disturbing her further, and decides to occupy himself with other matters. He reflects on his time spent in the village, and confides that he plans to relocate to the city soon, eager to further his studies in alchemy. However, he finds himself deeply attached to the people here, having lived among them for nearly a month, and is uncertain how he will bid them farewell. For the time being, he visits the blacksmith's shop, where Boban hands him his armor. As he collects it, Banga arrives, presuming that Takumi intends to leave, and urges him to proceed to the city, asserting that his production business will flourish even more there. The blacksmith then mentions that a merchant from Bolton will be arriving next week, and informs Takumi that arrangements have already been made for him to travel to the city in the merchant's carriage, a gesture done for his benefit. Takumi expresses his sincere gratitude to both Boban and Banga for their unwavering support, then heads back. Along the way, he encounters Martha, who is carrying a bucket. Upon closer inspection, he learns that the bucket contains the innards of a horned rabbit, which Banga had recently hunted. Martha explains that these innards are considered the most delectable part of the horned rabbit, but before they can be eaten, they must be thoroughly cleaned and processed to ensure that no hidden diseases or parasites remain. Regrettably, Martha lacks the necessary materials to clean the innards, and as a result she had intended to dispose of them. However, by fortunate happenstance, Takumi possesses purification magic, and utilizing his unique skill, purifies the innards, rendering them instantly safe for consumption. It becomes evident that the spell he employed belongs to the light magic class, prompting Martha to caution Takumi not to reveal his magical abilities to everyone. She explains that only a select few in this world are capable of wielding light magic, and its rarity makes it highly sought after by unscrupulous individuals who might attempt to exploit Takumi's skill for their own gain. Before Takumi can become apprehensive, Martha reassures him that the villagers are not inclined to cause any harm, as none of them are driven by greed. However, the real danger will arise once Takumi ventures beyond the village and into the city. He expresses his sincere gratitude to Martha for her invaluable advice, and his appreciation for the villagers' unwavering kindness grows even further. In response, he dedicates the subsequent week to improving the village's infrastructure. He constructs an additional 10 to 15 meters of reinforced high walls around the village to bolster its defenses, and installs a meticulously designed medieval tube well to ensure the villagers have access to safe, clean drinking water. On the day of his departure, the trader named Papik arrives in the village and is immediately captivated by the exceptional quality of Takumi's potions, recognizing that he may have stumbled upon a hidden gem. Meanwhile, Takumi bids farewell to the villagers, and Martha presents him with a cloak, claiming it to be a collective gift from all the villagers, a token of their affection. Takumi is deeply moved by the gesture and expresses his heartfelt gratitude by bowing at a precise 90-degree angle, honoring them for their kindness. Shortly thereafter, Takumi departs from the village, embarking on his journey to the city, accompanied by Papik and a contingent of adventurers tasked with escorting Papik safely to his destination. The three adventurers, members of a C-rank party known as Lion Fang, introduce themselves to Takumi as Heath, Reel, and Bagar. Inquisitive by nature, one of the adventurers asks Takumi what is contained in his bag. Takumi nonchalantly reveals that a poisonous spider resides within, a revelation that sparks Reel's intense curiosity. However, as Reel ventures too close to Maple, she retaliates with a swift strike to his face, teaching him the importance of respecting boundaries. While they make an earnest attempt to befriend the venomous spider, Papik engages Takumi in conversation about the potions from earlier, expressing a desire to purchase some of them. Their discussion is abruptly cut short, however, as Mr. Papik is compelled to halt the carriage. Peering outside, they discover that they are being encircled by a band of goblins. Without hesitation, Heath, Reel, and Bagar disembark from the carriage to fulfill their duty as guards. Upon assessing the goblin threat, they deduce that additional goblins are concealed in the underbrush and quickly devise a strategy to neutralize them. While the adventurers engage the goblins, Papik is nearly overcome with fear, his anxiety palpable. Meanwhile, Heath, Reel, and Bagar show no mercy as they dispatch the goblins with swift and efficient strikes. Once the battle subsides, Heath commands the others to dissect the fallen goblins in order to harvest their magic stones. With that task complete, the group resumes their journey to Bolton. After a peaceful 3-day travel, unmarred by further attacks, they finally arrive at the city, Takumi's first venture into this new world. Upon their arrival, Takumi accompanies Heath, Reel, and Bagar to the Adventurers Guild, having just completed their escort mission. It is customary to register with the guild before being permitted to stay within the city, so Takumi decides to do so. He also takes the opportunity to register Maple as his pet. Approaching the receptionist, Hans, Takumi learns that the city does not have an alchemist's guild. However, Hans explains that many alchemists choose to register with the Adventurers Guild, using the guild card as a form of identification. Intrigued by this, Takumi agrees to register, receiving a low-ranked Adventurers Guild card. He immediately sees an opening to also register Maple. When Hans lays eyes on Maple, his face pales, and his anxiety nearly overwhelms him. Meanwhile, at Papek's establishment, Papek inquires about Takumi's potion stock. Takumi responds nonchalantly, claiming that he has 100 of each potion in his inventory. Upon hearing Papek's offer, Takumi is taken aback as Papek proposes 10 gold coins for the healing potion and 50 silver coins for the mana potion. Takumi quickly calculates the sum in his head and in a flash concludes that even the wealthiest tycoons such as Elon Musk would pale in comparison to the fortune he is about to amass from this transaction. Despite his internal jubilation, Papek offers an apology for presenting what he considers a low price. This gesture leaves Takumi somewhat perturbed, raising questions about Papek's true nature and his motivations for being so unusually generous. As Takumi momentarily drifts into a daydream of living as Wonder Woman's apprentice, Papek, ever pragmatic, offers a solution to Takumi's housing predicament, knowing that his potion production will require a proper base of operations moving forward. Initially, Takumi assumes that such an arrangement would come at an exorbitant cost, dismissing the offer outright, his thoughts brushing it off with disregard for what he perceives to be a feeble suggestion. However, Papek calls upon his butler Thomas and instructs him to escort Takumi to his new residence, which conveniently includes a dedicated workshop for his production endeavors. Upon arriving at the residence, Takumi is struck with astonishment as he beholds the grandeur of the mansion. A sense of relief washes over him upon hearing that the rent is a mere 1 gold and 50 silver coins per month, a sum that he deems quite reasonable for his modest sensibilities. Still, a trace of skepticism lingers within him, and he wonders if the house might be haunted. However, Thomas swiftly reassures him that no such supernatural forces haunt the property. With that assurance, Takumi finally consents to the offer. Later that day, the two of them return to Papek's company, where Thomas once again reassures Takumi that he will be able to settle into his new abode the following day. As they make their way through the city, Takumi becomes acutely aware of an unpleasant odor wafting through the air. "Hey, are you seeing this? Did you just let one slip?" Takumi exclaims, bewildered by the smell. He proceeds to disclose that this foul stench has been lingering ever since they entered the city. At this moment, Thomas reveals the source of the odor. It is the pervasive smell of the sewage system beneath the city. He further explains that only the nobility possess the financial means to purify their sewage, leaving those earning below the poverty line to suffer the oppressive stench. Upon hearing this, Takumi is deeply moved, his heart swelling with sympathy for the plight of the common folk. The following day, Takumi moves into his new home with Maple in tow. Faced with the absence of funds to hire workers, he sets to work himself, repairing the dilapidated parts of the house. Once the repairs are complete, he utilizes some materials procured from Papek's company and, employing his alchemical skills, constructs a toilet. The process leaves him thoroughly fatigued. After taking some time to recuperate, he returns to inspect his creation, only to find that it has turned out exactly as he had envisioned, perfect in every regard. As Takumi rolls over to inspect the newly constructed toilet, a sudden piercing scream from Papek grabs his attention. Hastily, he rushes to the source of the cry, only to find Papek ensnared in Maple's web. Takumi scolds his pet for her impudent behavior, but to his surprise, Papek seems rather comforted by the web's embrace. Afterward, Takumi, alongside Maple, offers an apology to Papek, but Papek reassures them that all is well. In a rather unexpected turn, he then requests to use the restroom. Moments later, Papek emerges from the bathroom, screaming like an aggrieved housewife. This time, he is utterly astounded by the unfamiliar design of the restroom. Seizing the opportunity, Takumi takes it upon himself to educate the confused Papek on the purpose and function of a toilet. He also reveals that he has installed a magical device within the toilet, which leads Papek to surmise that Takumi may possess the rare and coveted power of light magic. Although Takumi had intended to keep his abilities a secret, the revelation had now come to light. Disregarding this, Papik inquires whether it would be possible for Takumi to produce 100 of the toilets. Though Takumi initially finds this request to be absurd, he eventually concedes that it is indeed within the realm of possibility. Recognizing the scale of such an endeavor, Papik suggests that Takumi should recruit additional workers to assist him. To streamline the process, Papik proposes that Takumi acquire a contract slave, someone who could not only maintain the secrecy of his magical prowess, but also perform all the labor without question. He further emphasizes the peril Takumi would face if it were discovered that he possessed light magic. Papik warns that such a revelation would likely result in Takumi being seized by the church, compelled to specialize solely in healing magic. This thought weighs heavily on Takumi, who becomes uneasy about the prospect of mass-producing the toilets, fearing that it might lead to his abilities being traced back to him. However, Papik reassures him, offering his confidence that he would ensure Takumi's involvement remained concealed. As they converse, a brilliant light emanates from his guild card, signaling the urgent requirement to undertake a simple quest within the span of a month or face the forfeiture of his guild membership. This revelation prompts Takumi to acknowledge the necessity of acquiring more labor, leading him to accept Papik's suggestion of obtaining a slave. The two then make their way to Nolan Company in search of a suitable candidate. Upon arrival, Takumi begins to explore the area, but is soon captivated by the sight of a stunning elven girl, leaving him momentarily disoriented. She has no idea how the boy ended up there, but she firmly states that this is no place for a child. Meanwhile, the company owner introduces herself to Papik as Mulan. Papik informs her that Takumi is in search of a servant, though he is reluctant to commit to such an arrangement. Takumi explains that in his homeland the concept of servitude simply does not exist. Mulan acknowledges this and explains that while it is true that a servant becomes bound to their master upon signing a contract, the Kingdom of Barula enforces strict protections for servants. These safeguards include guaranteed provisions such as food, clothing, and shelter, and it is strictly prohibited to coerce a servant into performing tasks outside the scope of the agreed terms. Moreover, servants are explicitly forbidden from disclosing any information about their master. This revelation starkly contrasts with Takumi's preconceived notions and prompts him to reconsider. Mulan then elaborates on the various types of servant contracts. Those who enter servitude due to debts typically remain bound until their financial obligations are fully repaid. Such individuals are often criminals. Conversely, prisoners of war may voluntarily accept servitude to secure stable living conditions. Furthermore, Mulan explains that there are contracts involving individuals who were unlawfully captured and forced into servitude, a situation that is, regrettably, the most prevalent. In her estimation, it would be far more advantageous for Takumi to acquire one of the war prisoners, particularly because such individuals remain bound to their masters indefinitely unless explicitly released. She emphasizes that as a producer with unique and inimitable skills, Takumi would benefit greatly from a servant whose freedom is strictly conditional. Takumi acknowledges this and expresses that his priority is to dedicate himself fully to his craft. However, he admits that his current responsibilities with the Adventurers Guild, combined with the day-to-day management of his estate, have become overwhelming. In essence, he requires someone capable of overseeing the daily operations of his mansion, thereby allowing him to focus solely on his work. More importantly, Takumi raises a critical concern: the secrecy surrounding his abilities. He must ensure that any servant he takes on will not jeopardize the confidentiality of his craft. Additionally, he anticipates venturing into perilous territories to procure rare materials and resources essential for his production. Therefore, it would be highly beneficial if the servant possessed combat experience to accompany him on these dangerous expeditions. Acting in accordance with the client's wishes, Mulan surmises that Takumi requires 2 servants. She proceeds to introduce young Maria to the meeting room, a girl who was abducted by bandits in her youth and has since lost all familial connections. Maria has been diligently trained in reading, writing, arithmetic, and various household duties. Feeling somewhat uncomfortable in the presence of the young woman, Takumi explains the layout of his residence. The first floor includes a living room, dining room, and kitchen, while the second floor houses 4 bedrooms and a bathroom. With this information in mind, Takumi inquires whether Maria is capable of managing the household. Without a moment's hesitation, Maria affirms her ability to perform the required tasks but queries why the contractor appears so troubled. The truth is, Takumi is baffled by how such a beautiful young woman has yet to be selected by any master. Upon hearing this, Maria becomes visibly flustered and clarifies that her expertise lies solely in domestic chores, and she is unable to accompany her master on adventurous undertakings. In a state of urgency, Takumi hastily attempts to clarify that his remark was not intended to cause offense, and that he holds no such expectations from Maria. In response, Nolan reassures him that she will proceed with the contract once both parties have reached an understanding. As for the servant with combat experience that Takumi seeks, Nolan informs him that she currently has no war-trained servants available. Maria suggests that they might consider Sophia, but Nolan promptly asserts that Sophia should not be involved in this matter, and instructs her to return to her room and pack her belongings. Once Maria departs, Takumi inquires further about Sophia, prompting Nolan to mention that the girl has her own issues, though she refrains from providing any specifics, leaving Takumi intrigued. Nolan then assures Takumi that she will notify him as soon as a suitable candidate becomes available. However, driven by his intuitive abilities, Takumi insists on meeting Sophia. Reluctantly, Nolan escorts him to the elf's quarters and begins to explain that Sophia was captured during the long-standing conflict between the kingdoms of Triara and Ugar, a war that took place 50 years ago. She reveals that the kingdom of Ugar was a nation of elves. For various reasons, Sophia never entered into a contract with any master. She bears a severe injury to her left ear, and her right hand and left leg suffer from impairments. Additionally, her unique spiritual elemental magic, a rare gift among elves, has been sealed. Nolan suspects that Sophia is under some form of curse as a result of these afflictions. However, these impairments are particularly detrimental for someone in combat. After hearing the full account, Takumi requests to speak with the elf, and Nolan grants permission. Sophia is visibly surprised by the request, clearly reluctant to converse with the human man. With that, Nolan leaves the room. Takumi introduces himself, though Sophia refrains from offering her own name. Instead, she makes it clear that she would not be of any use to him. Undeterred, Takumi gently takes hold of her face to assess her status and discovers that despite her condition, she is an exceptionally powerful individual, having attained level 64. Although Sophia's impaired limbs lower her status by 100 points, and the exorcism curse she suffers prevents her from utilizing her mana, Takumi remains hopeful that he might find a way to lift the curse and utilize such a skilled individual in his expeditions. At that moment, Nolan enters the room, seeking a definitive answer. Takumi affirms his desire to contract with Sophia Sillet, confident that he can resolve her issues. Nolan reminds him that these problems have persisted for over 50 years, but Takumi stands firm in his decision. With this, the businesswoman bursts into laughter and reassures the elf that the contract is now in place. Sophia mutters in displeasure at the decision. Takumi then asks her directly whether she truly does not wish to accompany him. Despite her clenched fists and visible anger, Sophia retorts that it is unnecessary to confirm the wishes of a mere servant. Regardless, the contract is now solidified between the two parties, and Maria expresses her gratitude to Takumi for hiring both Sophia and herself. Bolton then casts a spell to solidify the contract, bringing the entire process to a conclusive end. Maria vows to work diligently in her role as Takumi's servant for many years, while Sophia, lowering her guard slightly, thanks her new master for accepting her. With this, Nolan is confident that she has finally found a suitable master for both women. Shortly thereafter, Takumi escorts them to his home. As soon as he opens the front door, he is knocked to the ground by Maple. Without hesitation, Sophia commands Maria to step away from the creature, while Takumi attempts to explain that Maple is his pet and introduces everyone. Though she understands, Sophia is left bewildered by the fact that her master keeps a deadly spider as a pet. Takumi then leads the elf to a spacious room and informs her that the adjacent room will be assigned to Maria. The maids are taken aback by the luxury of having individual rooms, and Sophia initially refuses, deeming it too extravagant. However, Takumi reassures her, insisting that there are enough rooms for everyone to use. The mansion also boasts a luxurious bathtub, available for the use of all. Sophia initially suggests that the master should use it first to avoid any issues with bathing or utilizing the water. However, Takumi explains that the tub is equipped with a magical mechanism that ensures everything remains impeccably clean. In the following scene, the servants experience the bath, and Maria expresses immense satisfaction with the comfortable life she has come to enjoy. She confides that she once believed Nolan would never allow them to leave, given that Nolan had never formed a contract with anyone, regardless of the financial incentives offered. Yet, Maria acknowledges Takumi as a worthy and capable master. Meanwhile, Sophia examines the contract carefully and notices that crucial details, such as the master's place of origin and his lineage, remain conspicuously absent. This omission causes the elf to grow suspicious, raising doubts that Takumi might be concealing something of importance. Later, the pair is taken aback when they find dinner prepared and waiting on the table. While this gesture seems to be a positive turn, Maria is filled with despair, believing she is of no use since preparing meals was her responsibility. Takumi reassures her, explaining that he took it upon himself to prepare dinner that evening, and that beginning the following day she will resume her duties in the kitchen. She then requests to at least handle the washing of the dishes. After calming the distressed girl, Takumi invites everyone to the meal. Sophia comments that it is customary for the master to dine separately from the servants, but Takumi firmly asserts that he prefers a more egalitarian approach. He further expresses his desire for them to refrain from calling him master, and instead to address him by his name. The following day, Takumi visits the Pepic business company and collects a magical parcel containing the items he had ordered. As he strolls down the street, his attention is drawn to a church he has never before encountered. He steps inside, taking a moment to offer his gratitude to Goddess Nolan for the abundant blessings and the opportunities that have raised his life to such a fulfilling and prosperous level. During his prayer, Takumi seeks to understand why the goddess had warned him to be cautious of the Holy Empire of Sidonia, especially since they hold dominion over religion in this land. To address his inquiry, Nolan herself descends and lifts Takumi into the sky, explaining that she has no affiliation with Sidonia, its church, or the doctrine of divine light. She clarifies that there are in fact two distinct religions in this world: the Church of Creation, which has venerated Nolan since the dawn of time, and the Church of Divine Light, a more recent establishment that worships a god that does not exist. Upon founding this church, the Holy Empire of Sidonia employed force to extend its influence, but Nolan refrained from intervening, valuing the freedom of human agency. Nevertheless, Sidonia successfully activated a spell to summon beings from another world, a ritual that ultimately led to the accident of summoning Aruma into Takumi's life. It was for this reason that Nolan chose to bestow her blessing upon him. She further cautions that while the blessing will endure for all time, the part of the blessing that aided him in his growth and helped him connect with good people will gradually diminish as he expands his influence in this world. This revelation means that everything that has gone well for Takumi up until now may soon take a drastic turn. Upon hearing this, he begins to understand the reasons behind the many fortunate encounters he has experienced, and realizes that from this point onward everything hinges entirely on his own actions. A year later, in the Holy Empire of Sidonia, the leader sits upon his throne inquiring of a subordinate regarding the progress of the summoned heroes. The subordinate responds that the three heroes are currently undergoing training. Homer and Packard, initially resistant upon their summoning, had been persuaded by Elizabeth to pledge their service to the Empire. As for Akira and Yamato, they were diligently honing their swordsmanship, facing immense pressure to give their utmost. During a misstep by Yamato, a man enters the training area and questions if that is truly all Yamato has to offer. This remark triggers a memory for the young man, recalling a time when he was soundly defeated in battle by Ipen. Since that defeat, many had assumed Yamato was lost, but determined not to repeat his past failure, the boy grips his sword once more and resolutely returns to the fight. Meanwhile, Akane is summoned for training, but she refuses, repulsed by the notion of violence. At that moment, Elizabeth enters the scene, clarifying that what is required is not violence, but the strength necessary to protect and ultimately save this world. While Akira vows to protect his comrades at any cost, the princess underscores the inspiring nature of Akane's companions. However, the only emotion Akane feels toward Elizabeth is a deep-seated repulsion, for she remains convinced to this day that the woman is a grave threat. Meanwhile, Takumi has just returned home, only to be knocked to the ground as usual by his pet spider. Maria and Sophia quickly rush to assist him, gathering his scattered belongings. However, just as the elf reaches for the magical parcel, Takumi swiftly tosses it into his item box, preventing her from touching it. This action only serves to heighten Sophia's suspicions. Driven by curiosity, she ventures to Takumi's workshop to observe him covertly. What she witnesses unsettles her. Takumi appears to be engaged in strange behavior, even going so far as to cut his own arm with a knife soaked in a mysterious substance. To make matters worse, Takumi mutters to himself, calling Maria terrible. This proves to be the tipping point for Sophia, who storms into the workshop and forcefully knocks Takumi to the ground, demanding to know what his intentions are regarding Maria. However, in the midst of her outburst, the elf suddenly collapses. Takumi, concerned, inspects her status and discovers signs of extreme exhaustion and a wound on her left hand. Acting swiftly, he heals the wound and uses his light magic to level up. Afterward, he carefully lays Sophia down in a bed. Maria explains that the elf's curse causes her to experience bouts of fatigue from time to time. In response, Takumi combines the dissipate and extra heal magics. successfully restoring Sophia's ear. With this healing, the alchemist believes that the elf will be able to fight as she once did. Eventually, Sophia regains consciousness and urgently urges Maria to flee from Takumi as quickly as possible. However, Maria reassures her that the master is a good person, having cured her of the curse. At this revelation, the elf realizes that the flow of mana has been restored within her body. As a result, Sophia demands an explanation from Takumi. He confesses that he required one additional level of light magic to break the curse. The purple liquid in the bottle, he reveals, is derived from the poisonous neem herb, which he had specifically ordered from Papik. By deliberately injuring himself and subsequently healing the wound, he was able to level up sufficiently to acquire the extra heal spell. Sophia, still perplexed, asks why he referred to Maria as terrible. Takumi responds that Maria had inadvertently mixed up his medicinal plants and in the process accidentally discarded them. Acknowledging the extent of his actions, Sophia swears her undying loyalty to her master, vowing to serve him for the rest of her life. The following day, Takumi ventures to the grand local library, only to be disheartened by the discovery of a mere 4 books on alchemy. It becomes evident to him that alchemy is a dying art, likely due to its reliance on the cryptic script of an ancient magical civilization, which severely hinders access to accurate translations. However, Takumi's frustration is short-lived, as his unique reincarnation gift allows him to comprehend all the languages of this world, a boon he attributes to Nolan's blessing. Upon his return home, Maria greets him with an amused remark, declaring she will never forget the most enchanting sight she's ever witnessed. Sophia kneeling before the boy, resembling a knight swearing eternal allegiance to a princess. Maple wholeheartedly agrees, reveling in the dramatic beauty of the moment. Takumi, however, is far less thrilled to have been cast as the princess in their whimsical tale. The alchemist eventually completes crafting the toilet seats he had promised to Papik, and contemplates stepping away from his workbench for a while. Maria, curious, inquires if he plans to create something new. He admits that he does, but also mentions his desire to embark on a spontaneous journey. He envisions seeking rare materials and exotic cuisines, visiting tourist attractions, and exploring ancient ruins. His plan is to bring Sophia along as a bodyguard, leaving Maria at home to oversee the household. Maple, feeling left out, questions her role in the expedition. The master bluntly reminds her of her status as a pet, prompting her to tag along anyway, unwilling to be abandoned. Meanwhile, Maria pleads to join her friends, but the alchemist firmly explains that someone must stay behind to manage the household affairs. In a melodramatic attempt to sway his decision, Maria compares her solitude in the mansion to being like a lone toilet in a blazing desert, or perhaps even something less significant. Takumi muses over Maria's peculiar obsession with toilet analogies, but acknowledges the genuine concern of leaving her alone in the house, especially with her pleading expression. Weighing his options, the alchemist uses his evaluation magic to assess Maria's status. To his astonishment, her attributes reveal intriguing potential as a warrior, giving him pause. Sophia, ever the strategist, supports Maria's case, suggesting she could train both of them in combat during the trip. Reluctantly, Takumi relents, allowing the young maid to accompany them. With their party finalized, Takumi shifts his focus to crafting the necessary armaments for the journey. When he asks Sophia about her preferred weapons, she surprises him by requesting a long sword, a 2.5-meter spear, a bow, and 2 knives. Momentarily taken aback by her extensive list, the alchemist dryly asks if she also desires a shield. Seizing the opportunity, the elf cheerfully adds a buckler, a small, lightweight shield, to her arsenal. Afterward, the young man turns to the other maid with the same question. Given her training in short blades under Mew and company, she suggests that a dagger or short sword would suffice. However, Sophia interjects, cautioning that relying solely on such weapons might limit her friend's offensive capabilities. She proposes teaching Maria how to wield a spear to broaden her skill set. Later that night, the protagonist prepares some magical steel ingots to forge the necessary equipment. In this world, metals must possess more than mere hardness. Without special properties, they are deemed worthless. The following day marks the beginning of spear training. Sophia instructs Maria to repeat several attack maneuvers, this time with her stance lowered. As the teacher demonstrates, the movement is accompanied by a strikingly resonant sound showcasing her precision and mastery. Meanwhile, Takumi focuses intently on crafting the armaments, nearing completion of the spear blades after expending a staggering amount of mana. Despite the exhaustion, the effort proves fruitful as he levels up several of his skills and classes in the process. Adding a personal touch to the weapons, Takumi etches a wing motif onto Sophia's spear and a flame design onto Maria's. To ensure their effectiveness, he imbues both weapons with attack enhancement and self-repair enchantments. Turning his attention to Maria's knives, Takumi considers how best to complement her role as a combat maid. He envisions the knives sheathed stylishly on her thighs, adding to her aesthetic as a warrior. At that very moment, despite being far away, Maria inexplicably feels a strange chill on her thighs and instinctively moves to cover herself, despite already being fully dressed. Returning to his role as a brilliant alchemist and blacksmith, Takumi realizes he needs precise measurements of both girls to tailor their armor accurately. However, the thought of asking them directly is far too awkward for him. Instead, he devises an unconventional solution, crafting life-sized dolls modeled after the two. While the approach might seem odd, Takumi feels far more at ease working with these stand-ins than involving the girls directly in the process. With the dolls ready, he decides to use the shell and leather of the fortified giant boar as the primary materials for the armor, complemented by fabric woven from calves' threads for a refined finish. Exercising his authority as master, Takumi designs the armor to align perfectly with his personal tastes, ensuring both functionality and aesthetic appeal. Once the manufacturing is complete, Maria and Sophia don their respective armors. Maria is awestruck, marveling at how flawlessly the armor fits her, almost as if it were a dream. Sophia, equally impressed, comments that the garments seem to have been made for them the moment they were worn. However, both remain mystified as to how Takumi managed to achieve such precise tailoring without ever taking their measurements. Maple was preparing to depart. Takumi, having used the dolls for measurements, swiftly shifts the conversation and emphasizes the importance of defense, especially given the use of spider wag in the construction. He then presents the weapons to the two maids, Sophia's sword and Maria's knives. Finally, he hands each of them a mythol magic ring, which will serve as a conduit for their spellcasting. Sophia remarks that the crafting of such items must have required a significant amount of mana. The blacksmith responds by explaining that the process itself is a form of training for him, providing him with benefits. In fact, it was through crafting these items that he unlocked both ice and lightning magic. The group then heads to the Adventurers Guild to register the maids as adventurers. Without delay, they are issued their rank identity cards. Takumi takes the opportunity to register the trio as a group, planning to take on a mix of rank G and missions before setting off on their journey. Sophia points out that taking low-level missions won't help him gain any experience points, but Takumi's objective is not to level up. As they converse, a group of rough-looking men approaches, intent on bothering the girls. They sneer, suggesting the women should abandon Takumi and explore the world with real men like them. The men, all rank D adventurers, boast that they could take much better care of the girls than a weakling like Takumi, with his frail frame and old lady hair. Undeterred, Takumi steps forward to face them, causing the tough guys to stare in disbelief, unable to comprehend why a boy would challenge them. While fear courses through him internally, Takumi maintains a composed and calculated demeanor, determined not to reveal just how terrified he is. Confident in their strength, one of the larger men throws a punch at Takumi's head. However, Takumi braces himself, turning his body rigid, making the punch land as if he were a concrete wall. At that precise moment, a man appears, scolding the troublemakers. He then inquires if the adventurer's damaged AR was the result of the boy's actions. Takumi scratches his face awkwardly, struggling to find the right words, while Maria attempts to clarify that the poor boy did nothing wrong. However, the man remains skeptical of their explanation. At that moment, Hans, who had been attending to the group, steps in to defend Takumi, asserting that it was the brash men who had initiated the provocation. The employee then introduces the man as Barak, the master of the local guild. Barak orders the healing of the fool who punched Takumi's cold forehead and tells the boy who endured the blow to follow him. In the master's office, Takumi is questioned about the incident, but he remains frozen, unable to articulate the events. The receptionist, having sensed traces of mana from the scuffle, inquires whether magic was involved in the altercation. Takumi is impressed by the man's ability to sense magic, but he clarifies that no spell was involved. Instead, he explains that he took some coal from his item box, synthesized it into diamond, and used it to coat his upper body. Hans, now understanding, realizes why Takumi initially sought out the Alchemist Guild. Barak then asks if the two girls accompanying Takumi are part of his group, to which they both confirm. Noticing their striking beauty, the clerk suggests that the master should immediately upgrade their group to rank D. Barak concurs, agreeing that it is the most practical solution to prevent further trouble from individuals like those who had approached them. Takumi is bewildered, having only just registered these individuals in the guild, and now they are already being recommended for promotion. It feels as though he is the protagonist of some anime. Uninterested in an easy path, the alchemist hesitates. In response, the employee proposes that the group take on some missions that he will personally assign to accelerate their progress, and the three agree to this plan. Without delay, Hans prepares 3 missions for the group. one to exterminate goblins, another to eliminate kobolds, and the final one to gather merrill herbs. On their first mission, Maple informs the group that 4 goblins are hiding in the forest. Sophia requests the coordinates to launch a surprise attack on the first 2. The remaining goblins, however, engage the group directly. Takumi reflects on the fact that all the missions he has chosen are either rank G or free classification. The reward for the mission was 5 or 6 silver coins, which isn't insignificant. However, the real issue is that they are encountering far more goblins and kobolds than originally anticipated. Sophia suggests that there might be a nearby camp of these monsters, typically commanded by a rank C goblin general. Takumi considers returning home to avoid a potential confrontation, but both Sophia and Maria are confident in their ability to infiltrate the enemy's territory. Meanwhile, Maple warns that she is on the verge of evolving, prompting Takumi to send her into a portal for a brief rest. Sophia then inquires whether this is a mobile dimension, and Takumi sheepishly explains that he mastered the use of it when his space-time magic reached level 3. With that, they proceed into the goblins' camp, where the elf estimates there are approximately 3,400 goblins. Takumi is increasingly unsettled and questions whether it is truly necessary to confront all these enemies. However, Sophia is confident that they can eliminate a significant portion of the horde with long-range magic. With that, they activate their rings and unleash spells upon the goblin army, resulting in complete devastation. But the battle is far from over. At this point, the enemy's general and a goblin knight, both of superior species, make their appearance. Despite his fear, Takumi charges into the fray, relying on his magic to aid in the fight. Hours later, the group returns to the guild exhausted but triumphant after completing all the missions in less than half a day. In disbelief, Hans requests that the group speak with the guildmaster. Meanwhile, Barak mentions that he requires an extermination squad with several members ranked above D. Suddenly, Maple steps out of the portal, landing a punch on the master's bald head as she proudly showcases her evolution. Sophia and Takumi are unsure how to react, but Maria is thrilled with the spider's new form. Maple, eager to converse with the redhead, is delighted by the opportunity to finally do so. Before they part ways to claim their rewards, Hans announces that Takumi has been promoted to rank E, while the girls in the group have advanced to rank F. Back home, Maria requests some fabric scraps to make underwear for herself and Sophia. Takumi thinks it would be a challenge to create such garments from scraps, but Maria presents a drawing to show that it's not as difficult as he might think. In response, Takumi sketches a version of much shorter underwear, assuming that's the standard. Though embarrassed, Maria insists that he make them in that style. Amidst this, Maple informs the group that Papik has arrived. However, as soon as he laid eyes on the mutant spider, he fainted. She promptly placed him in the living room to recover and get some fresh air. Once he regains consciousness, the businessman informs them that Lord Bolton Marcus Godwin wishes to meet with the alchemist to discuss the device with purification magic. Without delay, they head to the Grand City. Upon meeting, Lord Bolton expresses his astonishment at the device's effectiveness in preventing plagues. Feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude toward the young alchemist, he bows deeply before Takumi, and although the boy is embarrassed by the gesture, Godwin reassures him that he is more than willing to do so as often as necessary if it will benefit his domain. Additionally, Takumi had managed to defeat a goblin camp, an accomplishment even Bolton's own knights had failed to achieve. For this reason, the Lord urges Takumi to prioritize his safety above all else, emphasizing that his loss would be a great blow to society. He stresses that the alchemist must not let his guard down, especially with the sacred empire of Sidonia potentially targeting him. Several days after their return, the young man is utterly exhausted. While Maple completes the undergarments he requested, he heads to deliver the garments to the girls. Upon discovering that Takumi spent 3 days in the workshop crafting these clothes, the girls hurriedly try them on. As they begin to undress right then and there, Takumi, mortified, rushes out of the room to retreat to his own. Once safely inside, he believes he's losing his sanity, overwhelmed by the strange situation. In a moment of confusion, he envisions his inner devil, who taunts him, revealing that his unease stems from his curiosity about trying on the panties himself. Panicking and flushed with embarrassment, Takumi lets out a scream of horror. After all the exhilaration, Takumi needed to unwind, so he resolved that his next endeavor would be the creation of refrigerators. Once he completed the task, he explained to the girls that these devices were designed to preserve food by keeping it chilled, preventing spoilage. Their excitement was palpable as they felt the crisp, cold air emanating from the fridge. To construct the refrigerators, Takumi meticulously synthesized iron, chromium, and nickel to forge stainless steel. He then integrated a magical apparatus imbued with advanced cooling enchantments. Regrettably, his creation lacked the capability to run Halo. Nevertheless, Maria expressed her sincere gratitude, delighted that she could now prepare meals with fresh ingredients at any time. Takumi intended to bestow one refrigerator upon Maria, while the remaining two would be dispatched to Patsy for commercial sale. With that task completed, he was eager to shift his focus to the next project. When Sophia inquired if he was about to craft something entirely new, he clarified that he was instead planning to refine their equipment. Ever since their skirmish with the horde of goblins, he had been contemplating several modifications. Given their impending travels, Takumi was determined to enhance their gear to its optimal state. His next goal was to forge a set using mithril and adamant for superior durability and performance. Takumi made his way to the guild to inquire whether Hans knew of any blacksmiths proficient in working with adamantite and mithril. However, given the rarity of these metals, craftsmen with such expertise were scarce. If Hans had to speculate, the only individuals capable of handling them would be the dwarves of Namel. Unfortunately, that was a considerable distance away, making the journey impractical for Takumi. Resigned to the fact that finding a suitable blacksmith was unlikely, Takumi prepared to leave. However, before he could depart, Hans mentioned a city called Chore, located near the kingdom of Barula. If Takumi ventured there, he might be able to procure mithril and adamantite. The only complication was that access to the mines was restricted exclusively to members of the blacksmith guild. Fortunately, Hans had a clever workaround. Hypothetically speaking, if Takumi were to accept a quest to exterminate the monsters infesting the mine, and by sheer coincidence happened to stumble upon some mithril in the process, there would be nothing preventing him from extracting the ore himself. At that moment, the guildmaster suddenly appeared and announced that he had the perfect quest for Takumi. He explained that the guild's supply of tree wood was running dangerously low, and with winter fast approaching, they needed someone to gather more. The Trent often roamed near H's mines, and since Takumi was already looking for a reason to enter the mines, the guildmaster assumed he wouldn't mind taking on a bit of wood collection. Additionally, since Takumi was heading there anyway, the guildmaster requested that he and his party escort someone along the way. However, this was beginning to feel like an excessive workload. Takumi had never undertaken an escort mission before, so he questioned why the members of Lion Fang couldn't handle it instead. The guildmaster explained that Lion Fang was currently engaged in another assignment, leaving Takumi as the only viable option. Reluctantly, Takumi agreed to the escort mission, though he was still unfamiliar with the route to Chore. Seeking clarification, he asked Hans how long the journey would take. Hans informed him that traveling by horse-drawn carriage would require 7 days, whereas using a monster horse twice as swift as an ordinary steed would cut the travel time down to 4 days. Recognizing the efficiency of this option, Takumi promptly inquired whether he could secure a monster horse for the journey. Unfortunately, Reel arrived with bad news. Every monster horse was already in use by Lion's Fang. Hans was taken aback by Reel's sudden return, but Reel clarified that his party hadn't completed their quest yet. He had simply slain a black buffalo along the way and returned to drop it off before it spoiled. By morning, he needed to set out again to rejoin the rest of Lion's Fang. Since Reel would be staying in town for the night, Takumi invited him to his home to rest and take a bath. The mention of a bath immediately piqued Reel's interest, and he eagerly accepted the offer. Pleased by his response, Takumi assured him he was welcome, but he had an errand to run first, so Reel could wait for him there. However, Reel preferred to accompany him instead. Takumi allowed Reel to tag along as he headed to Papik's company. While there, he successfully persuaded Papik to lend him a couple of monster horses for his mission. In exchange, Papik requested that Takumi sell him a portion of the ores he would acquire from H's mine. As for the refrigerator Takumi had previously delivered, Papik was thoroughly impressed with it. He was so pleased that he requested Takumi to craft additional units for him once he returned from his mining expedition. Meanwhile, back at Takumi's mansion, Sophia was growing increasingly anxious. The longer he remained absent, the more she worried that something might have happened to him. Later that evening, Takumi was on his way home with Reel, apologizing for dragging him along on such a lengthy errand, especially after his exhausting journey. However, Reel dismissed the concern, reminding Takumi that he had chosen to accompany him of his own accord. At that moment, Reel's instincts flared. He could feel an intense, hostile gaze fixed upon them. In an instant, he assessed the situation and realized that with his current equipment, he stood no chance against whoever was watching them. Without hesitation, he seized Takumi's wrist and broke into a sprint. The assailant swiftly closed the distance, striking Reel across the face with a powerful kick. As he staggered back, their attacker revealed herself. It was Sophia. Convinced that Reel had been attempting to abduct Takumi, she was fully prepared to cut him down without hesitation. Before she could deliver a fatal blow, Takumi quickly stepped between them, urgently clarifying that she had completely misunderstood the situation. After listening to his explanation, Sophia knelt before Real, offering a sincere apology for nearly killing him over a false assumption. Fortunately, Real was unharmed and chose to forgive her, though the encounter left him with a growing list of questions for Takumi. That list only expanded when they finally arrived at Takumi's house, where Real was greeted by the sight of even more attractive women. Bewildered, he turned to Takumi for answers. Takumi explained that he had needed a maid to maintain the household and a bodyguard for protection, so he had hired Sophia and Maria. As for Maple, she had undergone an evolution at some point. Excited to see Maple again in her new form, Real approached her eagerly. However, while Maple remembered him, she still harbored a strong dislike for him. Seeing this, Real collapsed to his knees in despair. Both Bagar and Heath had already settled down with wives. Takumi had 2 beautiful women living with him, and yet he remained single. Takumi quickly corrected him, making it clear that he wasn't romantically involved with either Sophia or Maria. Seizing the opportunity, Real immediately attempted to change his luck by asking Sophia if she would consider dating him. She rejected him without a second thought, followed swiftly by Maria doing the same. Once again, Real was left utterly dejected. Later that evening, as he wept in the bath over his repeated failures, Takumi gathered Maria and Sophia to discuss the mission he had accepted to mine mithril and adamantite. Sophia agreed that it was a worthwhile endeavor, especially since Trent wood was a valuable resource. With everyone in agreement, Takumi announced that they would set out in 3 days. The following morning, Real departed to rejoin the rest of Lion's Fang. With him gone, Takumi turned his focus toward crafting new equipment for the upcoming Trent hunt. He forged a magic-draining tungsten carbide sword, an exceptional weapon in its own right, but far too large to wield effectively. To resolve this, Takumi intended to break it down into a more manageable form. However, when he attempted to use his alchemy skill, the sword fiercely resisted his efforts, demanding far more energy than usual. After a grueling struggle, he successfully refined the metal and reshaped it into 2 separate blades. These new weapons had the ability to drain mana from any opponent they cut, leaving Takumi thoroughly satisfied with his craftsmanship, albeit completely exhausted. 3 days later, Takumi and his companions rendezvoused with Papik to retrieve the carriage he had promised them. Awaiting them inside was the individual assigned to their escort mission. Approaching him, Takumi struck up a conversation, and the man introduced himself as Gambo. The group sets off on their journey, but along the way they make a necessary stop at a field to hunt tree ants. As they venture into the forest, Sophia quickly notices a Trent attempting to camouflage itself among the surrounding trees. She promptly alerts Takumi, who wastes no time charging in to cut it down. The creature retaliates, but with Sophia and Maria covering him, Takumi swiftly fells it without issue. However, that was merely one Trent. An entire forest of them still awaits. Realizing that eliminating them one by one would be far too time-consuming, Sophia proposes using magic to expedite the process. The strategy proves highly effective, allowing them to clear out numerous tree ants with ease. However, their momentum is abruptly halted when they are confronted by an elder Trent. No matter how much magic they unleash upon it, the creature continuously regenerates its wounds. The only way to vanquish it is to sever its main body in a single, decisive strike. Understanding this, Sophia instructs Takumi to engulf his blade in flames and deliver the final blow, while she and Maria provide support. With their combined efforts, they successfully bring down the formidable Elder Trent, securing enough material for their hunt before resuming their journey to Horace. Upon arrival, they head straight to the local Adventurers Guild, where Gambo directs their attention to a posted quest. The request calls for exterminators to deal with mole-like monsters infesting the mines, creatures notorious for devouring ores, making them a significant threat. Accepting this mission would grant them access to the mines, making it the perfect opportunity to proceed with their plans. A short while later, the group finds themselves deep within the mines, and luck is on their side. It doesn't take long for them to uncover some mithril and adamantite ore. However, the discovery of these valuable metals stirs the attention of nearby monster moles, prompting the group to prepare for battle. Before the mole emerges from the earth, Takumi pauses, then forms a brilliant plan. The moment the mole surfaces, he blinds it with a burst of light magic, causing it to collapse, making it an easy target to finish off. Takumi's approach proves highly effective in dealing with the moles, but Sophia and Maria are somewhat disappointed. Their desire to engage in the fight is thwarted by the simplicity of Takumi's method. With the mining expedition complete, they return to Bolton a few days later. Takumi then visits Gambo's shop to learn the intricacies of working with mithril and adamantite. Gambo walks him through the painstaking process of extracting the metals from the ore, and after considerable effort, Takumi successfully creates both mithril and adamantite. He begins using these materials to craft various pieces of magic-infused gear. Once the new gear is finished, Takumi hands it over to Maria and Sophia for testing. The girls are astounded by the armor's lightness and durability, not to mention the magical properties it contains. Takumi explains that he tailored each set of armor with magic attuned to their preferred elements. As for his own armor, Takumi has imbued it with a spell known as Thunderclap, granting him an extreme agility boost, allowing him to move at unparalleled speeds. The moment Takumi attempts to impress the group by showcasing his newfound speed, the universe seems to have other plans, and he ends up crashing headfirst into a wall. Undeterred, he moves on and presents the new weapons he has crafted, along with the enchantments he has imbued into them. Both Sophia and Maria are thrilled with their new spears, but Sophia has a request of her own. She expresses her willingness to lay down her life to protect Takumi and asks if he could create a shield for her, one that would allow her to guard him more effectively. Takumi agrees that it's a reasonable request, but he gently reminds Sophia that she should cherish her own life just as much as she cherishes his. Meanwhile, Nolan has been quietly observing Takumi's progress. She is pleased with his development, recognizing that the strength he is gaining will be crucial for the challenges that lie ahead. A year into the future, where the other heroes have been summoned, we find Akira and Yamato. After completing their training, they are dispatched on a mission by the King of Samandar. The mission, however, carries a distinctly sinister air. Back in Takumi's present, he has just finished crafting the shield Sophia requested. Though it was her request, Sophia feels guilty upon seeing how much energy it drains from Takumi. She wishes that he had an assistant to help him with the production, so he wouldn't bear the burden alone. Meanwhile, in the royal capital, the Lord receives a letter from Sidonia. It appears that word has reached them about Takumi's creations and the purification magic embedded within them. Though they have yet to learn Takumi's identity, they are already plotting to take action against him. In the ensuing days, a messenger from Sidonia approached the king of Barula regarding the magical artifacts utilized for sewage purification. The Church of Divine Light had condemned this practice to the Pope of the Sacred Empire of Sidonia, asserting that light magic was a divine blessing granted exclusively to their order. Consequently, they demanded that the patent for the purification magic circle be relinquished to them. With contempt, the king of Barula scoffed, remarking that if this power were truly a divine gift, the church should be capable of crafting the magic circle on their own. Irritated, the messenger countered, declaring that according to the Pope, employing sacred purification magic for such a profane purpose was utterly unacceptable. Even so, the king of Barula remained resolute in his refusal, prompting the messenger to threaten the complete withdrawal of all Church of Divine Light priests residing in Barula. Unfazed, the king rose to his feet and coolly stated that they were free to remove them, as it would not trouble him in the slightest. In due time, Takumi became aware of the situation and questioned whether it was prudent to challenge the church in such a manner. However, Peck remained utterly indifferent, pointing out that the kingdom housed another religious sect besides the Church of Divine Light, the Church of Creation, devoted to the goddess Nolan. Intrigued, Takumi inquired about the deity worshipped by the Church of Divine Light, to which the businessmen speculated it to be a knot. Setting the matter aside, Peck explained that the kingdom of Barula upheld religious freedom, resulting in a strong presence of followers from the old Church of Creation. The priests of this faith provided recovery magic as an act of charity, whereas the clergy of the Church of Light demanded exorbitant sums for the same service. Taking advantage of the discussion, Peck admitted he had a request, accompanying Marquis Godwin, who had previously demonstrated vessels imbued with purification magic to the king. Now His Majesty wished to meet the alchemist in person. Peck made it clear that refusing the invitation would greatly displease the king. Seeing Takumi's hesitation, the businessman pressed his palms together in a pleading gesture, all but imploring him to accept. That night, Takumi returned home and announced his impending departure for the royal capital, Bacalatos. He requested the company of his maids, who eagerly embraced the opportunity to visit such a prestigious and storied place for the first time. He cautioned them that they would leave in a week, during which he needed to make various preparations. Maria inquired about the duration of the journey, to which Takumi replied that it would take 7 days by her own carriage. Determined, she resolved to prepare sufficient provisions for the trip. Seizing the moment, Takumi mentioned his intention to craft new cloaks for both her and Sophia. To enhance their utility, he had asked Peck to procure a dark elemental magic stone, enabling him to imbue the cloaks with perception-blocking enchantments. Not only would this prove advantageous in combat, but it would also allow the two to navigate the city unbothered by unwanted attention. The following day, at a bustling street fair, Maria remarked to Sophia that Master Takumi greatly underestimated his own worth. The elf concurred, acknowledging his striking appearance and exceptional skill as both a producer and an alchemist. Noticing Sophia's abundant praise for their master, Maria narrowed her eyes with suspicion. Sensing danger, Sophia hastily made an excuse to leave, but Maria remained convinced. She was certain the elf harbored feelings for Takumi. Meanwhile, Takumi visited the chapel to speak with Nolan. He sought to understand whether or not the goddess of the Church of Divine Light was truly different from Nolan. With an air of certainty, Nolan declared that she was the only goddess in existence, though Takumi would eventually come to understand what Anat truly represented. However, what irked her most was the man's curiosity about this so-called false goddess. She explained that the sacred empire of Sidonia had recently taken an interest in him. Recalling that some of Nolan's blessings could be undone depending on his actions, he suspected this was what had drawn Sidonia's attention. However, Nolan refuted the idea, stating that Sidonia was the very reason Takumi had arrived in Midgard in the first place. In other words, this matter extended far beyond the power of a mere blessing. If that were the case, Takumi questioned the fate of the heroes summoned by Sidonia. The goddess admitted that she had interfered with time when she sent him, placing him in the world a year before the heroes were to be summoned. In other words, their arrival was still several months away. Eager to grasp the full scope of these revelations, Takumi pressed for more answers, but Nolan swiftly declared that time was up and dismissed him on the spot. Awakening in the chapel, Takumi found himself irritated that the goddess had evaded his question. However, since he had no intention of meeting the heroes, perhaps the matter was not of great importance. Speaking of them, in the sacred empire of Sidonia, 10 months prior to Takumi's current time, the heroes were undergoing rigorous training. Back in the present, Takumi presented his companions with cloaks, much to their delight. Overcome with enthusiasm, he couldn't help but remark on how stunning they looked in their new attire. The moment Maria sensed he had overstepped, he immediately clutched his head in despair. Shifting focus, he revealed his plan to construct a custom carriage for their journey. Thinking long-term, he reasoned that owning one would be far more practical than constantly renting or borrowing. The only remaining obstacle was securing a monster horse to pull the cart, as they were significantly more efficient than ordinary steeds. Apparently, the best course of action was to procure one from the guild. Upon hearing this, Maria chuckled and asked if the master even knew why Bolton was called the City of Adventurers. Takumi confessed he had no idea. In response, the maid knelt once again in embarrassment, assuming her master possessed knowledge he clearly lacked. Undeterred, she pressed on, explaining that Bolton earned its name due to the surrounding regions teeming with formidable creatures, including the infamous Death Forest. Among the beasts inhabiting these lands were unicorns, purebred warhorses, and griffins, each surpassing monster horses in both strength and speed. Armed with this knowledge, the group set off for the Forest of Death. Along the way, Takumi, intrigued, pondered whether dragon horses, being far swifter than monster horses, shared lineage with dragons. Maria promptly dismissed the notion, explaining that their resemblance was purely superficial. Sophia elaborated, pointing out that the primary distinction lay in their rhinoceros-like horn and the dragon-like scales covering their bodies. In the midst of their conversation, a wild wolf suddenly emerges and charges toward the group. Sophia instinctively reaches for her shield sword, but the beast rushes past them without a second glance. Takumi assumes this is due to the perception-blocking enchantment on their cloaks, which effectively deceives the wolf's senses. Despite this advantage, Sophia removes her cloak, declaring that they should fight and use this opportunity for training, something Takumi is less than enthusiastic about. As their journey progresses, the elf faces off against a massive boar, felling it with a single strike. Maria, overjoyed by the unexpected bounty, eagerly anticipates preparing an ample supply of meat for their meals. However, their excitement is soon interrupted when they come across a fallen Trent. Realizing he needs Trent wood for the carriage, Takumi considers this an incredible stroke of luck. He had been prepared to purchase some from Peck, but with this much available, he can construct the entire carriage himself. While the team members gathered resources from the area, Maple grew bored and wandered off alone through the territory. Eventually, she stumbled upon a wounded dragon horse lying on the ground. The spider approached to offer assistance, but the horse retaliated, launching a beam from its horn. This reminded Maple of the time she was rescued by Takumi, so she reassured the horse, telling it that she had an extraordinary master who would heal its injuries. At that moment, two giant ants emerged, the true culprits behind the horse's wounds. Without hesitation, Maple ensnared them with her web, allowing the horse to finish them off with a powerful beam. However, they soon realized that a vast ant hill surrounded them. Maple quickly erected a web barrier, but the ants began to consume the fabric in an attempt to break through. Desperate, the spider tried to communicate telepathically with her master but failed. Believing her friends had abandoned her and returned home, she felt a deep sense of isolation. Severely injured, the horse's strength faded and it collapsed unconscious. The ants eventually broke through the barrier, and in that final moment, all Maple could do was scream for her master while clinging to the horse. In the next scene, Maple awakens to find Takumi's hand gently resting on her head. Overcome with emotion, she cries out, lamenting how she had begged for her companions to come. The group explains why communication failed. Apparently, the barrier she created was so strong that it severed the flow of mana from the outside. Once calmer, Maple explains the situation regarding the dragon horse, who had suffered severe injuries. Without hesitation, Takumi attempts a healing spell, but it is forcefully repelled by the creature itself. Sophia observes that the horse seems cautious even in her unconscious state. Furthermore, the elf senses that other monsters are closing in, making it increasingly perilous to remain there. Maple, fearing the horse will be left behind, spirals into despair. However, Takumi reassures her that such a thing will not occur. With that, he transports both the spider and the horse to his other dimension. Sophia considers it reckless to place an advanced monster in that dimension without a familiar pact, not to mention the immense strain it places on Takumi's body. He assures her he is fine, but soon the weight overwhelms him, causing him to collapse to his knees. He attempts to drink a potion to recover, only to fumble it and fall to the ground unconscious. Half a day later, Takumi remains in bed, still unconscious. Sophia observes that even in his sleep he keeps the dimension active, and unless Maple opens it, the dragon horse will remain inside, slowly draining Takumi's strength. With this in mind, the elf, determined not to let her master weaken further, takes his hand and kisses it, hoping to communicate with Maple within the alchemist's alternate dimension. The elf asks if the spider can remove the horse, but Maple worries that the creature will be even more frightened if it suddenly finds itself in an unfamiliar place. However, Sophia explains that Takumi may not survive if nothing is done, urging her friend to recreate the barrier she had used in the forest. Without the view of the surroundings, the horse will be less fearful. Maple agrees to the plan, promising to carry it out. Once this is settled, Sophia announces she will visit the Pape company to purchase medicinal herbs for monsters. Maria offers to take on the task, allowing the elf to stay and look after Takumi. Later, as Takumi rests, he feels warmth in his left hand. Without fully realizing it, he begins to hear the voices of his companions echoing from various moments they've shared. This realization prompts him to awaken. When he raises his torso, he discovers that the warmth he felt was Sophia holding his hand. Seeing her master awake, the elf is both surprised and relieved. Takumi, with a content smile, affirms how grateful he is to have such wonderful companions. Outside, Maria observes the scene with wide, gleaming eyes. Meanwhile, Takumi prepares to check on the dragon horse, prompting the group to head toward Maple's barrier. Upon noticing that the creature has regained much of its strength, the alchemist inquires if she wishes to form a bond with him, similar to the one he had with Maple. At that moment, Takumi activates his taming ability, and the electricity from the horse's horn transfers into the magic circle he had conjured. With the process complete, Takumi casts a high-level healing spell, fully regenerating his new companion. Maple asks what the horse's name will be. Recalling how he named the spider after the maple leaf pattern on her abdomen, Takumi decides on Tsubaki for the horse, a camellia tree known for its year-round foliage and blooms of red and white flowers. Maria finds the name beautiful, and the others echo her sentiment. Tsubaki leans in, bringing her snout closer for Maple to pet. Embracing the horse, the spider softly speaks of the loneliness, sadness, and fear she felt when she was wounded in the forest, but how everything changed when the master came to her aid. To celebrate this newfound happiness, Maria invites everyone to a special dinner she will prepare. Without hesitation, everyone eagerly accepts the invitation. Upon returning to the royal capital, Balat visits the Palam slave trade company. A beast girl with magical potential is presented to a prospective buyer. She pledges to hone new skills, yet the man dismisses her, stating he requires immediate utility, not an exotic novelty he must nurture. With that, he departs. An employee consoles Rava, urging her not to lose hope, assuring her that a suitable master will eventually come. Crestfallen, she lies on her bed, replaying the same empty reassurances Burton, her master, has repeated for years. In a distant memory, she recalls a bittersweet moment with her little brother, shattered by impending hardship. The child asked where she was going, and through tears she promised to send money home. Yet reality proved far harsher than her words. As night falls, Takumi labors in his workshop as always. At dawn, he announces his departure for Gambo's atelier to handle forging tasks, crafting carriages and horseshoes for Tsubaki. Meanwhile, Sophia and Maria recall the master's recent surge in workload, fulfilling an additional order of potions and refrigerators for the Pape company, leaving him restless. Iki reassures them he isn't overexerting himself and departs regardless. At the Bolton Guild, Takumi overhears a heated exchange between Barak and another man. Intrigued, he asks Hans for details, The receptionist explains that monster sightings near the city have sparked unrest, though no harm has been reported. Hans has even sketched the creature based on witness accounts, describing it as enigmatic yet non-threatening. For now, turning to Takumi's visit, Hans inquires about his purpose. The alchemist states his intent to register another familiar. Hans, unfazed after Takumi's last registration of a spider, claims nothing could surprise him anymore. However, the moment a dragon horse materializes from another world, his composure shatters. Comparing the creature to his sketch, he realizes this is the very beast spreading fear. Just then, Barak's companion shouts that the monster has appeared, prompting the guildmaster to order Takumi to follow at once. Meanwhile, Sophia strolls through the streets, recalling her conversation with Mulan, who regretted lacking servants with the elf's desired traits but vowed to reach out to traders in other cities. Shifting the topic, the human remarks on Sophia's transformation since forming a contract with Aruma. Just then, Maria calls out, announcing she's completed her task and is heading to another butcher. Concerned about Takumi's exhaustion, she's ensuring he stays well fed as he often neglects meals when engrossed in work. Sophia admits she'd love to ease the master's burden but lacks alchemical knowledge. Maria suggests helping in the kitchen and the elf offers assistance in that regard. However, Maria unexpectedly refuses, leaving Sophia wondering if her friend doubts her competence. The human concedes she does, yet Sophia feels the same, placing them on equal ground. Maria then notes Sophia's newfound serenity, finding her elegance endearing. Flustered, Sophia dodges the remark, hastily urging Maria to finish shopping and return to Takumi. Upon arriving at DM's workshop, they find the alchemist collapsed from exhaustion. The blacksmith regrets not stopping him earlier, knowing how much joy he finds in his craft, but at this rate, Takumi is bound to break down. Despite his deteriorating state, the results of his relentless efforts stand before them, a carriage of his own making. Maria excitedly praises its lavish interior, though Sophia finds her enthusiasm excessive. Inside, Takumi reveals he enchanted the carriage with spatial expansion, transforming it into a fully equipped mobile home complete with a kitchen, bathroom, and bedrooms. Thrilled, Maria takes Tsubaki's reins and sets off. Meanwhile, sipping tea on the couch, Sophia marvels at the carriage's impeccable stability, unaffected by their high-speed travel. Takumi asks Maria if something is troubling her, to which she suggests installing retractable blades on the vehicle, deeming it a cool addition. Startled, he hesitantly agrees to consider it. After racing ahead for a while, Tsubaki levels up, gaining enhanced attributes. Upon reaching their destination, Takumi meets the Lion Fangs and is pleased to have them as his escort. Heath is awestruck by the Draco horse pulling the carriage until Peck arrives with Godwin, Maris of Bolton, and another man, all praising the alchemist's craftsmanship. Takumi expresses gratitude for their company to the capital, and Peck eagerly steps inside to inspect the carriage. However, the moment he enters, a piercing scream erupts followed by a loud bang, prompting Takumi to rush over in alarm. It was merely Peck, overwhelmed by the sight, unable to believe Takumi crafted it alone. Seizing the young alchemist, he raves about his unparalleled talent, frantically demanding manufacturing details. Godwin swiftly punches Peck's head to rein him in, prompting an immediate apology. Meanwhile, the Marquis openly admires the vehicle, subtly hinting at his own desire for one. Godwin, however, is more direct, requesting a similar carriage and offering 100 platinum coins. Takumi mentally calculates. 100 platinum equals 1 billion yen, exceeding 37 million rias. The sheer magnitude leaves him utterly stunned. Thus, the journey to Bolton, the royal capital, begins. As they travel, Godwin tells his companion that Aruma Takumi has greatly benefited his domain and possesses the potential to achieve global renown for his inventions. He also feels responsible for shielding the alchemist from those who might exploit him for wealth. Maris acknowledges the necessity of protecting people in Barula but struggles to grasp the complexities of the Holy Empire of Sidonia, where vigilance can never wane. Speaking of Sidonia, in that empire, many months ahead of Takumi's present, Ayan reads in her chamber about goddess Anna who shaped humanity in her image. She then forged beastmen from animals to serve humans and later created elves and dwarves from spirits, also gifting them to mankind. After reading this, the girl approaches a beast girl in her room, touching her collar with evident disdain. Back in the present, the carriage reaches Bacalatos safely. The Lion Fangs faced minimal trouble, as Maria and Sophia swiftly dealt with any threats. At times, they didn't even stop. Kadam Tsubaki handled dangers while in motion. Peck approaches Takumi, requesting a discussion upon reaching the inn. Once there, a businessman declares he will present the king with a carriage akin to Takumi's, citing Godwin's belief that this would best showcase the alchemist's brilliance. With the royal audience set in 5 days, constructing a carriage in such a short span seems daunting, so he suggests starting after returning to Bolton. However, Takumi asserts there's still time, igniting determination in Peck's eyes to expedite the process. Later, Takumi informs the man that Peck mentioned Palom, a slave company with a spacious garden suitable for a workshop. Sophia recalls its owner Bolton as a trustworthy man and suggests the master needs assistance given his exhaustion from the journey and lack of rest. Since Sophia and Maria lack alchemical skills, their visit to Palom presents an opportunity for Takumi to find a capable assistant. Sophia emphasizes that she vowed to protect him, yet if he neglects his health, no external threat will be as dangerous as his own relentless overwork. Heeding his loyal squire, the alchemist arrives at Palom Company in search of an alchemy expert. Bolton mentions hearing that Takumi is crafting a carriage from mithril and adamantite, prompting Sophia to recall someone fit for the task. Outside, Maria rushes to Sophia, alarmed that Maple is missing. Though the spider was just beside Tsubaki moments ago, it vanished without a trace. Concerned, the elf joins the search, calling for Maple inside the company, until Rava's terrified scream echoes through the halls. Sophia scolds her friend before apologizing to the beast girl, who stares in awe at the elf's beauty. Picking up the book the girl dropped, Sophia notes its antiquity. The young beast girl, an avid reader of magical texts, confirms its age. It's the Encyclopedia of the Fundamentals of Alchemy, Arnold style. Curious, Sophia inquires about the title. The girl explains that while some deem alchemy circles obsolete, she believes they provide the best foundation for mastering decomposition and recomposition. Takumi soon finds Sophia in the hallway requesting her presence and selecting a new group member. Once gathered, Bolton introduces Rava. As Takumi greets her, Rava sinks into despair. If this boy rejects her too, she'll have no way to support her family. Hearing that Takumi seeks someone passionate about alchemy, Rava instinctively rises to respond, only to recall the harsh rejection of her last client. Doubting her worth, she hesitates. Sophia reassures her, noting she has been self-studying magic and alchemy. Upon hearing she used the encyclopedia, Arnold style, Takumi lights up, eagerly discussing its distinctions from other techniques, such as the Aaron Martin method. Hopeful, Takumi sketches a circle on paper and asks if she recognizes its purpose. Trembling with anxiety, Rava forces herself to focus, meticulously analyzing every detail in search of an answer. This moment is everything to her. The fear of failure ingrained in her past paralyzes her. Overwhelmed, she bursts into tears, blurting out that in her town they use sweet beekeeper honey instead of fluffy cream. Takumi rises and extends his hand, inviting Rava to be his assistant. Confused, she hesitates. She failed the challenge since the alchemy circle looked nothing like the spiral sweet she knew. But Takumi clarifies that it was indeed for that type of site. He expected regional variations in dough mixtures and found the honey idea intriguing. What mattered was that Rava recognized it instantly. That was precisely what he sought. With that, their agreement is sealed, and Rava requests that all her earnings be sent to her family. Her village is impoverished, and becoming an indentured servant was the only way to fund her brother's education, hoping he could secure a better future for their mother. Takumi warns that giving away all her wages would keep her enslaved, but Sophia interjects. If Rava masters alchemy, she may one day earn enough to buy her freedom. The elf asserts that Rava isn't serving just any master but someone truly kind. Perhaps, even in servitude, she might find happiness. Takumi then introduces his new assistant to the other girls, who swarm her as if she were a boy. He quickly restrains Maria and Maple, who eagerly introduce themselves. Surrounded by such warmth, Rava starts believing she can truly thrive here. Meanwhile, in the sacred empire of Sidonia, the king inquires whether Barula's stance has changed. The messenger reports that 3 messages were sent, yet each response remained the same. Firm rejection. The king decides it's time to teach Barula a lesson, even if it means ruthless measures. Without hesitation, the other man vows to rally the knights immediately. Princess Elizabeth urges her father to wait, as Sidonia will soon summon the heroes, making rash actions unwise. The king insists the matter cannot remain unresolved, but Elizabeth argues that faith should be their weapon. She proposes spreading rumors that someone has defied the Church of Divine Light. The messenger worries this could incite the faithful's fury, but that is precisely her intent. Once unrest begins, the Divine Light Squadron will take action. The next day, the gifted alchemist from V-Board married Rava, conjuring a carriage forged from an adamantite alloy via an alchemical circle. Takumi noted that its core structure mirrored that of the spiral sweets, and believed Rava would soon master such intricate creations. Skeptical, the beast girl doubted the master's certainty given the complexity of the task, yet the young man stood firm. Rava possessed the rarest trait an alchemist could have, the spark in her eyes as creation unfolds. With that faith, Takumi tasked his apprentice with synthesizing basic components. On the day of the audience with the king of Barula, Takumi admired a carriage crafted by his own hands. A gentleman approached, inquiring if it was his creation. Takumi confirmed, stating it was a gift for his royal majesty. Impressed by Arumi Takumi's skill, the man's familiarity with his name puzzled the boy. Suddenly, Peck and Bolton rushed over, exclaiming, "Your Majesty," startling Takumi as they referred to the man beside him. Apologizing for the late introduction, the man revealed himself as Lobos Barula, ruler of the kingdom. Stunned, Takumi turned pale and knelt. Lobos urged him to forego formality, while Peck and Bolton bowed. Surprised, the audience wasn't held in the reception hall. The king's visit had a deeper purpose. He found it tedious to let guests languish in waiting rooms only to meet them flanked by guards. Setting that aside, he was eager to meet the renowned alchemist and personally offer his gratitude. Dispensing with formality, the king acknowledged that thanks to Urumi, the royal capital had resolved its sewage crisis. Bowing humbly, he admitted that under normal circumstances a lavish banquet, generous rewards and noble titles would follow, yet attracting the Sadia Empire's attention was something Takumi wished to avoid. A true king safeguards his people. Privately, Takumi reflected on the ruler's refusal to judge by appearances. After this unexpected encounter, King Lobos rewarded him for resolving the sewage issue, and the group departed the castle. Lobos instructed his servants Simon and Galahad to keep the meeting secret. Simon vowed to impose a gag order on the entire castle. Once Barula exported this magical device to other nations, Urumi's influence would inevitably expand, an outcome the king feared. He knew the Church of Divine Light would not remain passive when that moment arrived. Days later, the group returned from the royal capital. Bolton and Takumi officially purchased the mansion they had been renting from Peck. During afternoon tea, Maria surprised Takumi by again declining a salary increase, saying the food and necessities he provided along with her allowance were more than enough. Similarly, Sophia refused payment. Takumi stressed the importance of saving for when their contract ended, but Sophia, as an elf, vowed to spend even her final days guarding his tomb. Maria wished only to outlive her master by a day, so their resting places could be intertwined. Hearing this, Takumi was left speechless. In Sedia, Elizabeth acquired the sewage-purifying magical device from Bolton after a spy infiltrated Balados and secured one with great difficulty. The princess deemed the device a heretical crime, defying the wrath of Anat, an offense so grave that even Pope Wallur mourned its existence. The spy revealed that factions within the Church of Divine Light believed Subia should eradicate such evil without mercy. Referring to the Divine Light Squadron, Elizabeth declared that the source of this corruption lay in Bolton, and that any threat to the dignity of the Pope or the goddess Anat would not be tolerated. The following day, Rava confessed her desire to register with the guild as an adventurer. Like Maria and Sophia, this would allow her to boost her stats as an alchemist and craftswoman while developing her mana. Takumi agreed, affirming that adventuring was indeed an effective way to enhance mana. Soon after, the Beast Girl arrived at the designated location and received her registration card. Grateful for the assistance, Rava praised Hans for offering low-rate money transfers home. He replied that many adventurers sought the same service, making it an easy task. With a new member joining Takumi's group, Hans suggested naming the team. Despite all members being ranked D except for Rava, the Alchemist Party was among the guild's finest and deserved recognition. Embarrassed, Takumi recalled he never intended to become an adventurer. Moreover, unlike groups like the Lion's Fangs, his team lacked defined roles. Amidst the commotion, Barak approached the young man, urging him to address this matter first. He stressed that an adventurer's body was their greatest asset. Strength ensured survival. Takumi reiterated his lack of interest in becoming an adventurer, but the master vowed to train him personally. Soon after, Takumi was mercilessly humiliated and beaten by the ruthless bald man. After reveling in the boy's defeat, Barak asked if he had chosen a name for the team. Grasping at the first thought, Takumi muttered, "We are adventurers." Barak scoffed at the absurd name and slapped him again, leaving Takumi feeling 25 years older after countless falls. Growing impatient, the master demanded to know what symbolized Takumi Irumi's existence in this world, as the team's name would stem from that answer. Stammering, Takumi blurted out Tittle upon arrival, prompting Barak to hurl him skyward like a frisbee. Witnessing this, Rava realized the path of an alchemist was indeed grueling. After returning home, Takumi discusses the group name with the girls, hoping for something better than toilet lid. Maria suggests Lord Takumi and his servants, but the boy dreads another beating from Barak if he presents that. Rava raises her hand with an adventurer perfecting alchemy, his bodyguard, maid pets, and an alchemist in training. Takumi appreciates the thoroughness but finds it far too long. Maria then offers toilets, fridges, underwear, and Takumi, though Takumi fears such a name might earn him 5 trips into orbit. Guilt-ridden, Maria imagines herself as a walking toilet once more. As the situation spirals, Takumi turns to Sophia for ideas. Instead of naming, the elf fumes over Barak's merciless treatment of her master, vowing to crush the bald brute with equal ruthlessness. Sensing the tension escalating, Takumi urges calm, acknowledging that the man was responsible for sharpening his intuition, evasion, body control, and martial arts. all in a single day. Hearing this, Sophia relents, though Takumi knows this matter is far from resolved. Meanwhile, at the Holy Empire of Sardinia's castle, 10 months ahead for Takumi, Yamato engages in sword training. Eyes burning with determination, Akira watches with a smile, noting his relentless offense wouldn't hold in a real fight. Akane questions the effectiveness of his style, to which Akira replies, he is the hero after all. She reminds him that both she and Yamato bear that title too. Uninterested in the conversation, Akira invites her for a walk. She promptly refuses, prompting him to taunt her, suggesting she's worried about her slave observing her. He suspects Akira still views the nation as she did before their summoning, ignoring him. She walks off with her friend, reflecting on how Akira was once decent. In her room, Akane reads that Anna created humanity, followed by beastmen and elves to serve them. According to the text, the Church of Divine Light upholds human supremacy, yet from traders traveling between nations, she's heard that the Church of Creation teaches all races are Nolan's children. Summoned by a nation ruled by the Church of Divine Light, Akane wrestles with her purpose. Though told they were summoned for world peace, something feels amiss. Back in the present, Takumi gifts Rava a spell-activating ring and a staff forged from Elder Trent and mithril. Maple appears, admitting envy of the impressive weapons. In response, the master presents her with a clawed gauntlet designed with Rava's help to avoid hindering her web manipulation. Overjoyed, the pet gratefully thanks them both. Takumi returns to Barak with his group, having settled on the name Cat's Claw. Before the alchemist can react, the giant seizes him in a sleeper hold, paired with an armlock. Maria suggests, end this big man Takumi and his servants, prompting Barak to slam the boy to the ground like a sack of manure. Fearing Sophia's fury, Takumi braces himself, only for the elf to coolly point out his weak defense, urging him to focus on vulnerabilities, as that's where Barak strikes. After the harsh session, a battered Takumi is approached by Hans at the guild, who proposes a simple escort mission. Intrigued, Takumi listens as the guildmaster explains that with their upgraded carriage, the round trip to Kilbis would take just 4 days. Hans adds that the Peck Company specifically requested this escort. Takumi inquires if the Lion Fangs would be better suited for the task, but the receptionist explains they're already engaged elsewhere. Left with no alternative, Takumi accepts the mission. The group sets off in their carriage, pulled by Tsubaki, with Maple, Maria and Rava aboard, while Sophia drives the escorted carriage, with Takumi and the contractor conversing behind. The man reveals they're transporting daily supplies and magical purification devices, along with a request from the president to purchase milk in Kilbis. Takumi lights up at the mention of milk, especially upon learning the city also offers cheese. Their journey is abruptly halted by an ambush of monsters. Sophia identifies it as a territorial clash between goblins and forest wolves. Maple commands Tsubaki into action, and the dragon horse releases a powerful electric surge, cloaking the battlefield in dust. As it settles, the monsters lie slain, assuring the group a safe passage ahead. Hours later, in Kilbis, Takumi and the girls are captivated by the rich cream soup, with Takumi especially savoring its nostalgic taste from his former world. He tells Sophia he wishes to buy milk and cheese before leaving, and she assures him the local market remains open late. They all gather to enjoy bread with cheese, as Takumi reflects that though only months have passed since his arrival, it feels like years. This is his reality now, and he wonders if he'll ever return home. Perhaps this wave of nostalgia stems from the familiar taste of milk and cheese. He then asks Sophia about rice, and she recalls a grain from the kingdom of Samander unavailable in Barchula's market. Maria mentions it's sold in the royal capital, and realizing they were just there days ago, Takumi is left inconsolable over the missed chance. Sophia notices Takumi's odd demeanor and asks what's wrong. He inquires if she misses her homeland. Having left over a decade ago, Sophia admits she prefers the present, as she spent nearly 50 years cursed like a caged bird. Forming a contract with Takumi gave her newfound freedom, wings to escape, and now she looks only to the future, free from the weight of the past. Maria agrees, saying she's more eager for tomorrow than bound by yesterday, and Rava, Maple, and Tsubaki share the same sentiment. Reflecting on their words, Takumi realizes he too has been given wings for a fresh start. Acknowledging how each of them has uplifted one another, Takumi proposes the name Wings of Nolan, and everyone was happy. 2 days later, after completing their escort mission, the group returns to Bolton by nightfall. As Takumi steps into his home, a cloud of paralyzing poison ambushes him. In moments, his companions are subdued by masked hooded assailants. Just as a sword strike nears, a sudden projectile deflects the weapon, giving Takumi the opening to retaliate and defeat the attacker. Grateful, he thanks Maple, who had been in the mobile dimension, and heals his fallen allies. Maria questions why Takumi remained unaffected, and he explains that both he and Maple possess resistance to poison and paralysis. Maple ensnares the attackers in webs, allowing the group to plan their next move. Sensing the gravity of the threat, Sophia urges them to seek aid from the Adventurers Guild. Takumi dispatches her to summon Barak. Soon after, the guildmaster orders the masked captives taken away by carriage, and urges Takumi to report to the Lord immediately, warning that the situation is dire. The following day, Marcos Bolton disclosed to his subordinates that the assailants who had infiltrated Takumi's residence the previous night were operatives of the Divine Light Squadron, an elite faction charged with executing those who defy the sacred edicts of the Divine Light Church. These agents had been dispatched by the Holy Empire of Sidonia with the explicit intent of eliminating Aruma Takumi for his creation of the magical sewage purification device. Upon hearing this, Takumi reflected on the past, recalling that light magic had always been indispensable for purifying sewage treatment reservoirs. Priests from both the Divine Light and Creation churches alternated in performing this essential duty. However, while the Church of Creation, sustained by donations, provided the service free of charge to the faithful, the Divine Light Church imposed exorbitant fees. According to Barak, Takumi's invention posed a direct threat to the Divine Light Church's primary source of revenue, making him a target. Given the gravity of the situation, the alchemist contemplated seeking refuge in another nation, believing it to be the most prudent course of action. However, Godwin reasoned that remaining in Bolton would afford him greater security, as the country harbored a significant number of Creation Church followers who could provide protection. In response, Galahad declared that they would intensify surveillance at the city's entry and exit points, prompting Barak to conclude that heightened vigilance while traveling was all that was required. Overcome with trepidation, Takumi admitted that he had been contemplating suspending all missions until this predicament subsided. However, the guild leader dismissed such notions outright. As one of the top 5 teams in the region, Takumi's absence would deal a significant blow to the guild's standing. Though the boy recognized the peril that loomed over him, it became glaringly evident that no one else seemed particularly concerned for his safety. Regardless, Sophia swore an unwavering oath to safeguard her master, even at the cost of her own life, while Barak reassured him that he would personally train the alchemist in self-defense, ensuring he could repel any assailants they encountered. As they departed from the meeting with the elf expertly steering their carriage, Takumi found himself brooding over the grim reality. The Divine Light Church of Sidonia had truly marked him as their quarry. Worse still, their relentless pursuit jeopardized not only his life but also those of Sophia, Maria, and Rava, just as the harrowing events of the previous night had demonstrated. Their next stop was the Bolton Guild, where they formally registered their team under the name Wings of Nolan. Hans deemed it a fitting homage to the revered goddess. However, beyond this bureaucratic formality, the clerk divulged unsettling news. Whispers of the incursion Takumi had suffered at his home had already spread like wildfire. Moreover, rumors suggested that a substantial bounty had been placed on his head, painting the alchemist as an enticing target for mercenaries and adventurers eager to undertake missions beyond the guild's jurisdiction. That night, back at their residence, the Wings of Nolan remained on high alert, anticipating a potential renewed assault from the Divine Light Squadron. Takumi wrestled with a profound sense of guilt, knowing that his predicament had placed his companions in danger. However, they reassured him that they were fully prepared for any impending threats and vowed that the errors of the previous night would not be repeated. In response, Takumi acknowledged the presence of Maple and Tsubaki as capable protectors, yet he couldn't shake the discomfort of having guards perpetually stationed around his home. To alleviate this, he contemplated the creation of a magical device, one that would generate a protective barrier around the mansion, permitting entry only to those registered within its system. Still, a pressing concern remained: how to safeguard the estate when they were away on missions. Sophia proposed recruiting either an attacker or a tank to fortify their defenses. However, before any further discussion could unfold, the other women in the group adamantly insisted that the new recruit must not be a man. Takumi had no objections to this stipulation, but he was at a loss as to where he might find a suitable candidate. Sophia concurred, acknowledging that finding an adventurer capable of seamlessly integrating with the team was no easy task. Given this challenge, she suggested that the alchemist consider hiring someone from the Mulan Company, as securing a recruit through a magical contract would ensure both loyalty and reliability. Upon hearing this, Rava resolutely declared that she placed unwavering trust in her master, even in the absence of a formal contract. Maria and Sophia echoed the sentiment, reaffirming their absolute faith in him. Later that night, as bedtime approached, Sophia drew back the curtain of her room and observed that Takumi remained engrossed in his workshop, tirelessly working through the late hours. When dawn finally broke, the alchemist summoned Rava to assist him in the intricate process of crafting the security device. Before long, Sophia arrived as well, eager to lend a hand, expressing her keen interest in understanding the mechanics behind such magical constructs. With that, Takumi entrusted her with the task of engraving the alchemic circles onto the metal plates. After some time, once all the sigils had been meticulously inscribed, the lead alchemist carefully arranged the plates across the floor, methodically sprinkling a fine powder over each intricate design. Observing his unwavering dedication, Sophia remarked that he had foregone sleep entirely. Takumi acknowledged this with a weary nod, admitting that he had chosen to spend the night devising strategies to fortify their defenses should another attack arise. Maple emerged into the courtyard, astride Tsubaki, engaged in an intense training session against an artificial golem. The sight immediately reminded Rava of the deep connection between golems and alchemy. Takumi elaborated, noting that the intricate magical circle etched onto their chests was so complex that he had yet to even begin unraveling its mysteries. His partner mused that such a creature would make an exceptional frontline tank, though for that to become a reality, Takumi needed to refine his mana manipulation further. As his current proficiency remained insufficient, determined, the young alchemist returned to his work on the protection device. The project's completion propelled his mana control to its peak, bestowing upon him unparalleled precision over his spellcraft. With this newfound mastery, he believed he could attempt the creation of a gem core. Meanwhile, in the Holy Empire of Sidonia, the king received alarming news. The agents of the Divine Light Squadron had been captured. However, unlike typical operatives, they had failed to end their own lives before being taken. The couriers explained that the captives had likely been bound by contract magic, preventing any opportunity for escape or self-destruction. If that were the case, the enemy had likely already traced the attack back to the squadron. A revelation that posed a grave threat. Elizabeth urged her father to postpone negotiations with the Kingdom of Barula, prioritizing Sidonia's strategy. As for the magical circle within the ruins, Homer admitted he had failed to analyze it but believed the summoning remained feasible based on ancient tomes. Given another 2 to 3 months, the required mana would accumulate for the ritual. Meanwhile, Takumi attempted to harness a magic stone, only to find the task more arduous than expected. Rava reminded him that a golem required a multi-layered magic circle at its control core to function. Maple questioned his master's fixation on acquiring a golem, to which Takumi responded that it would serve as a formidable safeguard. The spider countered that their group already provided protection, but the alchemist feared the Divine Light Squadron's infiltration tactics, recalling the prior night's incident. Contemplating this, Maple suggested taming the golem instead, sparking an idea Takumi had not considered. Since the approach seemed viable, he sought Sophia's guidance on possible locations. The elf informed him that lost stone golems roamed the western region of the Death Forest, while iron golems occasionally surfaced in the ancient dungeon near Horus. Takumi was stunned to discover that real dungeons existed in this world, knowledge he had lacked until now. Seizing the opportunity, he set his sights on taming an iron golem within one. However, Sophia cautioned against venturing into a dungeon without a tank or an attacker, a remark that left Takumi flustered, exposing his inexperience. Nevertheless, they proceeded to the rocky plains west of the Death Forest, where they had once hunted Trent on a mission. Along the way, they encountered a towering stone golem striding across the terrain. Takumi was awestruck by its sheer magnitude and commanding presence. Sophia noted their fortune in stumbling upon such a creature, likely a Guardian-class entity from the ruins. To defeat it, they would need to target the magic stone embedded in its chest, the control core sustaining its form. However, Takumi promptly clarified that destruction was not his intent. The golem abruptly twisted its head backward, blinking in an eerily unnatural manner, sending the group into hiding. Sophia hesitated, uncertain whether its eyes served as weapons or merely detected threats. Regardless, the situation had escalated beyond their expectations. Perhaps allowing it to pass was the safest course, but the alchemist refused to back down. If the creature possessed such formidable strength, it would make an even more invaluable ally. With that thought, he lunged toward the golem, forcing Sophia, Rava, and Maria to rush forward in defense. Despite the looming danger, Takumi urged them to stand down, sensing a faint yet inexplicable connection with the beast. Though his body trembled as he neared the colossus, he remained resolute. Strangely, he detected no hostility from the stone sentinel. As Takumi observed the golem guarding the ruins, he speculated whether it bore a connection to the goddess Nolan. If so, its reaction might stem from the divine blessing within him. With this in mind, he raised his hand and activated his ability, taming the guardian golem, leaving the girls stunned. "That was too easy," Maple blurted out. Curious, he asked what to name the towering colossus. Takumi decided on Titan. "A giant from a myth I know," he explained. Titan appeared to convey something, and the alchemist deduced it sought a more adaptable form. Accepting the unspoken request, he invited the giant to accompany him. Sophia cautioned that bringing such a colossal creature into the city would incite mass panic. Takumi considered using the mobile dimension, but before any action was taken, steam billowed from the golem's joints, and it abruptly collapsed. As the dust settled, the creature reassembled itself into a much smaller form, its imposing presence now replaced by an unexpectedly endearing figure. Charmed by its new appearance, Maple eagerly urged Takumi to make it speak. Amused, Takumi vowed to do his best. Retracing his thoughts, Takumi turned to his companions, inviting them to continue their journey together. Without hesitation, they reaffirmed their unwavering devotion, pledging both body and mind to their master. Deeply moved by their loyalty, Takumi declared that Aces de Nolan was without a doubt the finest team there was. The team marveled at Titan's newly forged armor, momentarily dazzled by its radiant sheen. Now gifted with a voice, the golem expressed sheer delight in its reinforced form. Takumi had fused adamantite alloys for its skeletal frame with mithril plating for its armor, forging an immensely formidable body. Armed with a mace, shield and more, Titan had never been stronger. Beyond that, Takumi dismantled a backyard shed, unveiling a hidden hangar that housed a colossal version of Titan's armor. He explained that when the smaller Titan integrated with the larger one, they would form the Great Titan. As the fusion completed seamlessly, an overwhelming sense of fulfillment washed over him. High above, Nolan observed the spectacle with mild amusement, remarking on the boy's unrestrained ingenuity. However, another goddess soon arrived with dire news. Traces of Anat's existence had been discovered. Though she should not exist, centuries of faith from the Divine Light Church had seemingly willed her into being. Worse still, Anat was on the brink of becoming an evil spirit, and with Sidonia orchestrating the hero summoning, war loomed on the horizon. Nolan foresees the impending conflict, yet acknowledges her inability to intervene directly. The other goddess inquires if this was the reason she granted Aruma her blessing. Nolan affirms, the fate of events now rests solely in human hands. Meanwhile, Elizabeth stands before Sidonia's arcane circle, awaiting the pivotal moment that will soon unfold. A few days later, Takumi and his party embark on an expedition into an A-rank dungeon. Despite the formidable strength of the creatures within, the Golem Titan endures the relentless onslaught of the floor bosses, allowing the group to dispatch them swiftly and advance at an astonishing pace. In just a single day, they reach the dungeon's final floor. Upon resuming their journey, they arrive at the boss chamber, where an S-ranked Earth Dragon emerges as their ultimate adversary. Takumi quickly realizes the inadequacy of their preparation against such a formidable foe and regrets not bringing the Mega Titan. Without warning, the Earth Dragon lashes out with its massive tail, scattering the party. Thinking quickly, Takumi commands Maple and Titan to restrain the beast's tail. They successfully immobilize it using spiderwebs, and Sophia further incapacitates the dragon by piercing its tail, ensuring it remains trapped. Seizing the advantage, Takumi, Maria, and Rava unleash a barrage of magical attacks. Takumi then instructs Titan to fire its laser beams, inflicting devastating damage upon the creature. Sophia promptly alerts Takumi that the dragon's ribcage is exposed, an inherent weak point for most monsters. Recognizing the opportunity, he summons Shamelea, who charges at the dragon, knocking it off balance. Infusing his sword with potent lightning magic, Takumi hurls it into the dragon's gaping maw, electrocuting it from within and delivering the fatal blow. After their triumphant dungeon expedition, the group returns home, only for Takumi to be promptly summoned by City Lord Godwin. During their meeting, Godwin discusses an undeveloped section of his territory, an area left untouched by human settlement due to the presence of formidable monsters. Takumi is already familiar with this land, knowing it harbors a mine rich in rare materials such as mithril and adamantite. The moment Godwin notices Takumi's piqued interest, his enthusiasm surges, and he earnestly requests that Takumi establish a village there. Takumi is momentarily taken aback by the abrupt proposition, but Godwin quickly explains that he has heard of his accomplishments in another village and holds great confidence in his abilities. His aide then elaborates on a strategically viable location near the river, situated at a safe distance from the monster-infested region, where they intend to construct the settlement. As Takumi becomes engrossed in the discussion, Sophia interjects sharply, reminding him of the active bounty on his head and warning that founding a village would inevitably attract unwanted attention. Remaining composed, Takumi reassures her before shifting his focus back to Godwin, questioning the urgency behind his ambition to develop the area. Godwin launches into an elaborate recounting of past events, revealing that a year prior, the kingdom had attempted to establish a settlement in another region. However, due to the interference of corrupt nobles, the project was permanently abandoned, leaving countless villagers displaced and forcing them into a life of hardship as refugees. Now burdened with the responsibility of securing a permanent home for them, Godwin is under mounting pressure. Though he admits this is merely one of his motivations, Takumi interrupts before he can continue and decisively accepts the task. Sophia voices her concerns, believing this to be an unwise decision, but Takumi reassures her, stating that he cannot turn a blind eye to those who have lost their homes. He confides in her, revealing that he too once experienced such misfortune, only to find his path again through the kindness of others. Now he simply wishes to repay that generosity in kind without delay. Takumi and his team arrive at the designated location and commence the village's development. Their first priority is constructing an imposing perimeter wall using magic, fortifying it with alchemical enhancements and digging a defensive trench around it. Responsibilities are efficiently divided. Some focus on laying down roads, others channel water into the canals, while the rest work on clearing trees for resources. Once the foundation is firmly in place, they begin erecting houses and cultivating farmland. Pleased with the rapid progress, Takumi entrusts Sophia with informing Godwin that the settlement is now ready to receive the refugees. Godwin is astonished upon hearing that Takumi has successfully built an entire village in just 10 days. Wasting no time, he promptly arranges for the refugees to relocate. However, skepticism grips them. They have only been told that the settlement lies within a monster-infested region, raising fears that the government intends to cast them aside under the guise of offering aid. Their harrowing experiences with corrupt nobles have left them deeply distrustful, and they assume that whoever is overseeing this village is merely another scheming aristocrat. However, upon arrival, the refugees are left utterly astonished by the sight before them. A fully developed village, bordering on the scale of a town, with a grand castle standing proudly at its center. The knight captain leading the group, bewildered by the transformation, demands to know what Takumi has done to this place. With nonchalant ease, Takumi explains that he constructed homes for every resident, established administrative offices within the castle, and even prepared farmlands to ensure agricultural sustainability. The knight finds it inconceivable that such an immense undertaking was accomplished in a mere 10 days. But Takumi merely laughs it off as if it were nothing extraordinary. Meanwhile, the refugees eagerly begin selecting their new homes, yet one individual stands apart from the rest, a bunny girl named Manny, who observes from a distance with hesitation. Sophia approaches her and soon learns of her tragic past. Manny lost her husband in the previous village and now faces the daunting prospect of managing a farm alone. Recognizing the challenges she would endure, Sophia offers her an alternative, becoming Takumi's caretaker. Shortly after, an interview is arranged with Takumi and Maria, who outline the responsibilities of the position. Manny would be entrusted with overseeing the household while they remain occupied with their work. The offer comes with generous compensation and excellent conditions, yet Manny remains resolute in her distrust. Having lost her husband due to the cruelty of a noble, she harbors deep resentment and refuses the position, declaring that she does not trust Takumi. Maria attempts to assure her that Takumi is nothing like the nobles she despises, but Takumi, understanding her pain, chooses to respect her decision without pressing further. Takumi assures Manny that she is welcome to seek him out should she ever reconsider. However, she departs, convinced that he is no different from the deceitful, self-indulgent nobles she loathes. Doubts plague her mind. What if rejecting his offer leads to mistreatment or isolation within the village? Unwilling to risk such a fate, she resolves to leave the settlement entirely. Yet, mere minutes after venturing beyond the village's borders, she finds herself confronted by menacing monsters. Meanwhile, Takumi is still processing his first rejection since arriving in this world when Maple abruptly alerts him to an impending monster attack. A wave of panic sweeps through the villagers, many fearing they will be forced to fight. However, Takumi swiftly reassures them, issuing firm directives. He instructs the knight captain to fortify the village and protect the refugees, while his team takes charge of eliminating the threat outside. At that moment, a group of distressed villagers rushes to the gate, frantically informing Takumi that they witnessed Manny leaving the settlement. He immediately vows to retrieve her safely. Wasting no time, he deploys Mega Titan, and with his team at his side, they scale the fortified walls of the village. Meanwhile, Manny, now acutely aware of the peril she has placed herself in, desperately turns back, only to find the gates firmly sealed behind her. Two formidable wolf-like beasts close in on Manny, her heart pounding with the grim certainty of impending doom. Just as despair threatens to consume her, Takumi arrives in the nick of time, effortlessly dispatching the creatures and shielding her from harm. Moments later, the rest of his party returns, having vanquished the remaining threats. Manny stands frozen, her gaze fixed on Takumi in stunned disbelief. Her eyes catch sight of a fresh wound on his arm, and without hesitation she pulls out her handkerchief, swiftly wrapping it around the injury. "Why would you risk yourself for me?" she asks, her voice laced with unspoken emotion. Takumi meets her gaze with unwavering resolve. "I won't stand idly by while someone from my village is in danger," he declares. The wave of realization crashes over Manny. She had misjudged him all along. Bowing her head, she makes a bold request. "Please, allow me to serve as your maid." Without a moment's doubt, Takumi accepts, and the group eagerly welcomes her into their fold. word of a mysterious town, complete with a formidable fortress, materializing in the heart of a dense forest, swiftly spreads across neighboring nations. When news reaches the Emperor of Sidonia, his fury ignites. He is convinced that the Bolton kingdom has erected this stronghold as a direct challenge to their power. The thought of war begins to fester in his mind, but his daughter Elizabeth remains unshaken. With a calm yet resolute voice she reassures him that there is no need for concern, for they are fully prepared to summon the legendary heroes who will secure their dominance over the continent. Without delay, the Sidonia Empire initiates the forbidden summoning ritual, invoking an ancient spell of immense power. A colossal surge of energy erupts, cascading across the land like a tidal wave of raw mana. Far from the Empire, Takumi and his party instantly sense the ominous otherworldly force permeating the air. A sudden realization dawns upon him. It has been precisely 1 year since he was first brought to this world. The memory of Nolan's cryptic words resurfaces in his mind. She had sent him back in time by 1 year. And now at long last the heroes have arrived. 3 months elapse swiftly, and the summoned heroes, under the rigorous training of the Sidonia Empire, ascend to A-rank adventurers. Elizabeth, the eerie noble who orchestrated their summoning, announces that the time has come for their grand debut on the global stage. The two boys, brimming with anticipation, seize the opportunity to showcase their prowess. Conversely, the girl, bestowed with Nolan's blessing that grants her an innate sense of trustworthiness in others, remains wary. Despite her reservations, she chooses to go along with the plan. Meanwhile, Takumi dedicates himself to the advancement of his town. Once a modest settlement, it has flourished into a bustling hub, seamlessly linked to neighboring towns. Merchants and artisans arrive to establish shops and impart their skills, while his girls patrol the outskirts, culling monsters as he oversees the city's expansion. One day, Maple stumbles upon an unfamiliar crocodilian beast. Fortunately, Sophia recognizes it as a formidable creature foreign to this region. She promptly alerts Takumi, revealing that monsters from distant territories have begun encroaching upon their land. An anomaly she attributes to the energy surge they sensed 3 months prior. Takumi, aware that the disturbance stemmed from the hero summoning ritual, soon has his suspicion validated when the Knight Captain arrives. Summoning him back to the previous city for adventuring affairs, the captain also confirms that whispers of heroes emerging in the Sidonia Empire are spreading. Takumi's companions are stunned, though Maria clings to the hope that the goddess dispatched these heroes to guide Sidonia toward righteousness. However, Takumi knows such optimism is nothing more than a fleeting illusion. Upon arriving in the city, Takumi heads to the Adventurers Guild for an update. The receptionist briefs him on the summoned heroes, 2 boys and a girl, whom Sidonia is parading through the churches of divine light across various nations to flaunt their strength. From the details, Takumi deduces that these heroes hail from Japan. However, the receptionist swiftly shifts focus, informing him that Peck's company has requested his party as escorts for their journey to the royal capital. Takumi readily accepts, but later his new housekeeper Manny pleads to accompany them, fearing loneliness if left behind. Though Takumi hesitates, wary of the journey's dangers, his companions rally behind Manny, arguing she would be safer and happier by their side. Takumi begins to waver as Manny skillfully charms him into reconsidering. Meanwhile, the summoned heroes journey toward the Barkula Kingdom, Takumi's home. The 2 boys, intoxicated by their own power and fame, scoff at the discomfort of their carriage, lamenting its lack of suspension. Their conversation soon turns sinister. They scheme to seize elf slaves from Barkula, even if it means defying the kingdom's policies. Akane, the lone girl among them, is repulsed by their callousness. Aware that this world tour is her sole opportunity to challenge Sidonia's corruption, she feels an undeniable pull toward Barkula's capital. The key to her mission lies there. Upon reaching the capital, Takumi's party heads to the guild to register their completed mission. Suddenly, the 3 summoned heroes barge in, exuding arrogance as they command the adventurers to clear their path, an attitude that instantly grates on everyone. Assuming them to be overconfident novices, a few adventurers attempt to reason with them. However, the boys swiftly strike them down, demanding they recognize their inferiority before the so-called heroes. Their attention then shifts to Sophia and Manny, their interest piqued. Without hesitation, they demand Takumi sell his elf and bunny girl slaves to them. Unfazed, Takumi flatly refuses and resumes his conversation with the receptionist, dismissing their entitled demands without a second thought. The 2 fools bristle at Takumi's defiance, outraged that anyone would dare refuse an order from the so-called heroes. Even as Akane urges restraint, they dismiss her pleas. Instead, they command Sophia and Manny to follow them, only to be met with unwavering refusal. The girls will not abandon their master for anyone. Infuriated, the shorter one brandishes his sword and lunges at Takumi, but Takumi remains unfazed. With a swift alchemic incantation he dismantles the blade, reducing it to worthless fragments. Humiliated, the arrogant duo devolves into petulant threats vowing retribution. However, Takumi coolly reminds them that they've just violated guild protocol by initiating an unprovoked attack. Realizing they are surrounded by hostile adventurers, the two cowards curse Takumi before storming off in frustration. Left behind, Akane, mortified by their conduct, offers a sincere apology. As she and Takumi exchange introductions, recognition dawns. They are both from Japan. Before she can speak further, Takumi silences her with a discreet gesture, slipping her the name of his hotel for a private discussion later. Without another word he rejoins his companions. Akane's instincts are undeniable. Takumi is the one she has been searching for. That night, Takumi briefs his group on the encounter with the heroes and his decision to share his hotel details with Akane. A lingering unease settles over him as he wonders about her circumstances. Meanwhile, Akane and her slave navigate the shadows, evading Sidonia's ever-watchful guards as they make their way to the hotel. But stealth can only take them so far. Before long, the guards spot her and demand she return with them. Just as escape seems impossible, Sophia and Maple emerge from the darkness, swiftly intervening. Without hesitation, they whisk Akane away to the safety of Takumi's hotel room. Once inside, Akane wastes no time. She directly asks Takumi if he hails from Japan. Seeing no reason to conceal the truth any longer, he confirms it, not just to her but to his entire group. To his surprise, his companions accept the revelation with ease. He explains that Goddess Nolan granted him special blessings upon his arrival in this world. All he ever wanted was a quiet, peaceful life. But with the heroes and Sidonia now entangled in his affairs, that dream seems increasingly unattainable. Akane apologizes for drawing him into this mess, but Takumi reassures her. Before the conversation drifts, Sophia interjects, demanding to know the truth about the two insufferable brats Akane traveled with. With a solemn expression, Akane reveals that they weren't always this way. When they first arrived, they were different, better. Their personalities warped gradually during their time in Sidonia. She suspects something or someone has altered them. Akane reveals that she never trusted Sidonia, so she routinely purified her meals before consuming them. The two boys, however, were too preoccupied with their rigorous training to take any precautions. Without warning, she drops to her knees before Takumi, pleading for his help. She and her slave, Lulu, can no longer endure life in Sidonia. Caught off guard, Takumi asks what she intends to do next, but she has no answer, except one. Before anything else, she wants to free Lulu. The very notion of slavery repulses her. Without hesitation, Takumi dispels the enchanted collar constraining Lulu's neck. Akane exhales in relief at the sight of it vanishing. But before she can process it, Lulu clings to her desperately, tearfully begging not to be cast aside. Akane gently assures Lulu that she may stay, but as an equal, not as a servant. Overcome with emotion, Lulu tearfully agrees. Takumi then insists they must leave the capital immediately and invites them to take refuge at his mansion. Though hesitant to impose, Akane ultimately accepts. Soon their carriage races toward its destination. Inside, Manny and Maria serve Akane a steaming bowl of cream stew, offering her a rare moment of warmth amidst the turmoil. Akane freezes in shock. This is food from her world. The first bite sends tears streaming down her face. It's beyond delicious. Upon arriving home, Takumi gathers his companions and solemnly declares his intent to dissolve their slave contracts. Given the growing danger, he refuses to keep them bound by obligation. The girls bristle at his words, echoing the same argument they dismissed months ago. But before they can protest, he reassures them. He still wants them by his side, not as subordinates, but as equals. That assurance is all they need. Without hesitation, Takumi nullifies their contracts. With that settled, he forges 2 holy swords for Akane. However, before they can catch their breath, a summons arrives from the guild, an urgent call for all adventurers ranked B and above. A monster stampede threatens the new town. Takumi and his companions rush to the guild, where the Lionfang party and the guildmaster await. He inquires about the crisis in his newly established town and learns that a massive monster stampede is closing in. With most elite adventurers engaged elsewhere, the Knight Captain has urgently requested reinforcements. Though initially troubled by the lack of high-ranking support, Takumi is reassured. The 3 parties dispatched are said to surpass 100 ordinary groups in strength. However, the moment he hears about the third party, Real, the leader of Lionfang, visibly tenses. He already knows who they are and wants no part in dealing with them. Just then, the third party, Crimson, arrives. Their leader, Marilda, confidently introduces her all-female squad, pointedly acknowledging Takumi's party and Lionfang while deliberately ignoring Real, just to irritate him. The guildmaster wastes no time, ordering them to secure the town until the night order arrives. Acting swiftly, they set off in Takumi's carriage. He entrusts Akane and Lulu to Titan's protection at the mansion, ensuring their safety. During the journey, Takumi presents Sophia with a newly forged holy sword, explaining that this time he crafted a complementary pair. Her blade delivers devastating physical strikes, while his inflicts mental torment upon a mere scratch. Upon reaching the outskirts of the town, Takumi remains assured that the towering walls will hold, until his confidence shatters at the sight of hundreds of winged beasts soaring dangerously close. Even the ground-based monsters have begun their relentless ascent. Realizing the urgency, Takumi and his comrades launch an immediate assault, cutting through the horde and alleviating the pressure on the overwhelmed guards, who quickly open the gates for them. Once inside, the three parties disperse to eradicate the creatures infiltrating the town. Takumi and his girls fight relentlessly through the night, and by dawn their battlefield is clear. As the final remnants fall, the villagers cautiously step out from their shelters. Finally freed from terror, grateful for their salvation, the villagers express their thanks, while Takumi assigns Rava and Manny to tend to the wounded. Meanwhile, he leads the rest to reinforce the other parties. Upon reaching the opposite end of town, he finds adventurers stationed atop the walls, their eyes fixed warily on the forest. They report an unusual sight, the monsters in perfect unison retreating into the woods. Such coordinated behavior is far beyond their natural instincts. Throughout the night, the creatures had displayed alarming intelligence, attacking during moments of weakness and withdrawing when overwhelmed. While the others remain skeptical, Takumi theorizes that an external force must be guiding them. However, he offers a more plausible explanation. Perhaps the energy surge from the hero's summoning triggered mutations, accelerating their evolution. Meanwhile, the Emperor of Sidonia receives news of a monstrous stampede threatening Barcula Kingdom's new town. Seizing the opportunity to weaken a rival nation, his daughter Elizabeth proposes a bold strategy: cripple Barcula's allies to prevent reinforcements. Pleased with her cunning, the Emperor grants her command to deploy the heroes against a neighboring country. Back in town, amidst the chaos of tending to the wounded, Sophia stands vigilant for lingering threats. Rava approaches, carrying lunch, and voices her frustration. Takumi is recklessly distributing their potions, depleting their reserves should the battle persist. Determined to reason with him, Sophia confronts Takumi, only for him to nonchalantly dismiss her concerns, insisting he'll simply avoid injury. Though unimpressed, she understands his nature. He prioritizes others over himself. With quiet resolve, she makes a vow to shield him, even at the cost of her own life. As Takumi strategizes ways to safeguard the villagers, Maple suddenly sounds the alarm. The monsters have returned. Without hesitation, everyone rushes to battle. Takumi swiftly outlines their plan: unleash devastating magic first, then close in for melee combat. A barrage of powerful spells rains down, forcing the creatures back. Just as victory seems within reach, the monsters abruptly retreat. Confused, the adventurers turn to the forest, only to witness a colossal dragon-like beast devouring its kin, growing larger with each bite. From the shadows, a towering two-headed dragon emerges, its piercing gaze locked onto them. Takumi's eyes narrow. This is no ordinary monster. It's the one commanding the horde. The beast lunges at Sophia, but Takumi intervenes, pulling her to safety. Undeterred, she relentlessly strikes the dragon, drawing its fury. Enraged, the creature unleashes a torrent of flames, knocking her down. Before it can finish her off, Takumi's party arrives, binding the dragon and unleashing their full might. Despite her wounds, Sophia hurls her sword to Takumi. Merging its power with his own blade, he delivers the final decisive blow, slaying the beast. Exhausted, Sophia collapses. Takumi rushes to her, healing her wounds while scolding her recklessness. She weakly smiles, insisting she only wanted to protect him. Frustrated, he grips her hand. "Never throw your life away like that," he warns. As Takumi completes Sophia's healing, the others arrive, reporting that the remaining monsters have been eliminated while the rest have retreated. Relieved, Takumi exhales, only to suddenly collapse from severe mana exhaustion. When he awakens the next morning, his girls surround him, but Sophia lingers at a distance, still troubled. After several days assisting with the town's reconstruction, Takumi's party returns home. To celebrate, they host a lively barbecue, yet Sophia remains withdrawn. At first, Takumi lets it slide, but Maria and Manny mercilessly pressure him into confronting her. Takumi approaches Sophia, offering her a plate of grilled meat. Gently, he acknowledges her desire to protect him, but admits he couldn't bear to lose her because of it. Looking into her eyes, he asks her to stand by his side, not as a shield, but as his lifelong partner. Overwhelmed, Sophia swears her unwavering devotion. Shortly after, Takumi meets with the city lord to formally secure Akane and Lulu's residence at his estate. Lord Godwin grants his request but delivers grim news. The two Sidonian heroes have slaughtered countless innocents in an allied nation. Akane, stricken with guilt, blames herself for not stopping them. Takumi reassures her, reminding her it wasn't her burden to bear. Though regret lingers, she steels herself, vowing that when the time comes she will face them and put an end to their rampage. Later, Takumi turns to the goddess Nolan for clarity, questioning whether she sent him back in time to counter the threat of the summoned heroes. She offers no direct answer, only reminding him that the path forward rests in his hands. Undeterred, Takumi vows to safeguard this world, cherishing all that makes it worth protecting. Pleased by his conviction, Nolan shares her own hope that he will ascend as the greatest alchemist in history, for only then can the world truly thrive.